Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our Docs Digest episode 23 with your host, Christian Coffins. Today is May 15, 2019. We would like to share a prayer with all of you who risk it all to seek and share truth for the betterment of humanity. This broadcast is brought to you in part by Eternal Affairs Media and DarkDocs.com.
Welcome to Dark Docs Digest, episode 23, a Gray State special with Dan Hannon and Greg Fernandez Jr., who were in the Netflix documentary A Gray State. Greg Fernandez Jr., of course, has been on the show several times. He's one of the co-creators of Resist the Grove, and he was in our documentary, They Are Here to Save the World, when we went to the Bohemian Grove last year, and we're going to be meeting again with him this year. And now we have one of Eternal Affairs Media's new talents, Dan Hannon, who is also in the Gray State Netflix documentary. Oh, wait, I got a little feedback here. Hello. All right. Yes, so if you guys want to kick this thing off, you guys are the experts. I've been spending hours, if not days, on all of your research. It's just endless, it feels like.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg. Start things off if you want.
I'm sure. I mean, I guess for anybody that doesn't know about this case, we have David Crowley. He's a filmmaker. He was a former U.S. soldier. He was working on a project called Gray State. And on January 17th, 2015, his body, his wife's body, and his 5-year-old daughter's body are all found inside of their home in Minnesota in Apple Valley. And that's where it all starts. And from there, it gets pretty damn crazy. Now, you would think that 3 bodies in this house for what could be 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we really don't know. There really is no time of death. But you would think that that would be the craziest part of this whole story. But that's where the whole thing starts. And from there, that's when things get really crazy as far as trying to find the truth to what happened. Were they murdered? If David Crowley, who is guilty of killing his family, why do we not see any evidence that points towards that? Why are there so many people that are so certain that David Crowley is guilty that they will go to such lengths as to make threats, as to cyberbully, to play games, to do all of these things that truth seekers don't do, to do all of these things that real people are not supposed to do? Why has there been so much games? Why has there been so much drama when all we're asking is one simple question? Where is the evidence that proves David Crowley guilty? I don't think that's a big question. I think it should have been a simple question for the media, for the alternative media, for the family, for the friends, but most importantly, for the investigators. None of them can answer this question. In this country, you are innocent until proven guilty, and David Crowley has never been proven guilty. Therefore, he is innocent.
Yeah, I agree. This is Dan Hannon. I created the Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook page back on January 19th, 2015, 2 days after the bodies were discovered. After first hearing the official narrative, I knew something was up. None of these stories seemed to make sense. Nothing added up, and I wanted justice for this family. David was 29 years old. in shape, healthy guy, working on a lot of projects, and his wife was Comel. She was 28, and then they had a 5-year-old daughter, Rania, and all three were found dead from a gunshot wound in the head in their house, and the bodies were laying there after Christmas, they think up until 3 weeks before the bodies were found. None of the neighbors heard any gunshots. There was no problems with the family. David had just signed a deal with a Hollywood producer to make his story, his script, into a movie or a web series or a television series. One of the options, they were still finalizing that, but it hadn't come to fruition. And then his wife started an at-home business and was in the process of putting together, possibly writing a book on dietitian, nutrition, and whatnot. And then the daughter was in kindergarten. And so all three were found, and we're talking over the Christmas holidays is where we start finding out that there was no welfare checks by family, friends, neighbors, or relatives. And then we get over the New Year's Day holiday, still no welfare check. And then we get into the first of the new year where the daughter goes back to school and missed the first 2 weeks of school, and no welfare check performed on the family. So right away it seemed odd. And keep in mind that this story came right on the heels of the Captain Philip Marshall family in Calaveras County, California, where they were found all dead of a single gunshot wound in the head in February of 2013, along with the family dog. This story was all the same way, except the dog was living, the dog was there, the family dog was in the home, and when it was announced that body parts were missing from the human remains, they blamed it on the dog scavenging the bodies because he was so hungry. And what we've got is a variety of strange incidences of the portions of the body that went missing. And so what we've got is the official narrative of David Crowley snapping, maybe having PTSD, being high on marijuana was some other stories, mentally.
Oh, geez.
We had all of these theories came to fact, and to end up the fact that he shot his daughter once in the head, his wife once, twice in the head, and then himself once in the head. But after all this was done, Comel's body had 2 missing hands. Her left and right hands were missing. David's right hand, he was right-handed. His right hand was missing. Most of the skulls of David and Comel were missing. And the entire right arm of the daughter, Rania, the 5-year-old daughter, her entire arm was missing, pulled out and removed from the socket itself. And they said, well, the dog must have gotten so hungry, the dog did all this. So after that, this has been 4 years now on the investigation in looking into the strange, bizarre case. And we've got 2,600 members on the Justice page. There's another Justice for David Crowley of Gray State that has 10,000 likes on that page. And there's a hashtag on Twitter called Justice for Crowleys. We're looking for justice for this family. This was obviously a triple homicide. And why did they rule it a double homicide followed by a suicide at the hands of David Crowley when he was on record saying he was not suicidal and had plans looking forward to the future? So going through the FOIA requests, the group of us that have taken this case kind of by got a stronghold on this case has started to file FOIA requests for the actual reports, the autopsies, the BCA testing, the test, the alcohol, drugs in the body. There was no alcohol, no drugs in the body. And so various things like that, and we started to put together some YouTube broadcasts and had articles written about this story and had done radio interviews much like this show here. So this is for over 4 years now with the strange things happening in the story, including, I almost forgot to mention, David's mother died 7 months after the killings of the bodies were found, and she died under mysterious circumstances. His parents were divorced. She was living alone, and her body was found in the backyard patio at a table and chairs, slumped over with blood and vomit coming out of her mouth and nose. And so nothing was really answered to that. She, by reading the police reports, the only member of the family, of both sides of the family, that questioned any of this was his mother, Kate. She said in the police reports that it didn't add up. There's no way that this would have happened unless they both had a pact, or they did this together, or they both agreed on it, him and David and his wife. So she said, I don't believe this happening unless there was a possible pact. So that introduced another theory, that there was a possible pact theory. And then it was 2 years ago, the documentary A Gray State came out that was directed by Eric Nelson out of California. And that was more of a propaganda piece with a really heavy slant, really pushed the angle that David did this. It very much agreed with the official report. The law enforcement report, by the way, the case is closed. The case is finalized. They did rule that David did this. And that's where we stand today. The case is closed. So we're just pushing along, trying to bring exposure and trying to raise awareness about this case that still hasn't been. We don't know if it's a cover-up, if it's just poor investigating, but there's many inconsistencies. So far the list is at 47 right now of just simple inconsistencies in this case.
What really blows me away is that I've been involved in the truth movement, 9/11 truth movement, in the Fed, anti-Bilderberg, anti-globalist, anti-UN stuff for, years. And I've been to New York. I've, worked with InfoWars on certain things over the years, and I've never heard of this case, which, I heard of it because of the Netflix thing. I saw Greg on my TV. It just looked like, I saw the trailer for it, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? And I popped it on, and then sure enough, I freaked out. I print screened it. I sent it to Greg. I'm like, why are you on Netflix? And he's like, oh, yeah, I've been working on this. Here's a link. So it's so amazing to me how, I've been researching all kinds of stuff and involved with the occult and stuff and false flag operations and things of this nature, and this just totally flew off my radar. And the documentary definitely is very slanted, and it raises more questions than it answers. That's for sure. Here's a clip from the documentary, and this is a local news report with a police interview after the bodies were found.
Apple Valley Police recently closed their exhaustive year-long investigation, and for the first time are sharing their findings with the Fox 9 investigators.
It looks like David snapped and took the lives of his wife and daughter, and then ultimately himself.
Who wrote Allah Akbar on the wall?
He did.
In her blood?
Yes.
Why did he do that?
We believe that was just kind of a parting shot.
So that clip on its own is so unethical for them to speak in such absolutes about this thing that was at that time still being investigated. And from your research, did they have any substantial evidence that for sure he wrote Allah Akbar on the wall with his wife's blood?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Nothing. And that clip was done, I think, a couple months after their investigation closed. Absolutely not.
Okay.
And that's why they always say, we believe, we think, because they don't know shit.
Right. Within the time, the time frame of the documentary, it seemed like that was released right. So even there, they're playing with timelines and all of these things to kind of sway the narrative in one way or another. And so I saw that immediately as something that was very questionable in itself. Another thing, shortly after that, they played this. And this raises a lot of questions to me as well.
And this is a strange thing. It's almost like he created a soundtrack to the murder-suicide. Something called Ascent. This music probably played for hours, maybe days after they were dead. Was he imagining these 53 songs as the songs that he would play while he's committing a murder-suicide? It's hard to know. I mean, this was on a loop. Who plans a soundtrack for the murder of their family?
So there's this playlist on his laptop called Ascent. And, of course, you know, when you think of the word ascent, you think of, you know, going up to heaven or, you know, being risen up or something. But it's very, you know, odd. Like, okay, so if he didn't do it, and again, like, I'm not making, I don't know either way. This seems more like a staged homicide than a suicide for a lot of reasons that we can get into on the show. But do you guys think somebody like went onto his laptop and made this playlist?
I can take that, Greg. Here's what we know after the bodies were discovered is that there was 3 notes, essentially 3 notes, none of which was a signed note or a letter from David saying he wanted to do this and signing his name along with the reasons why. His laptop was opened. There was this 53-song loop playing called Ascent that David certainly could have had already made up before and have used, you know, potentially used in the past, but that was playing in a loop out to the Bluetooth speaker. And after the battery died in the speaker, it wasn't no longer playing, but they found the laptop still playing with nothing coming out of it for that. Next to that, on the laptop itself was a text box opened. Think of a program like WordPad or WordPad, and it said really all it said on there. Someone had typed in another alleged note that just says, "I have loved you all with all my heart." So someone had opened up, the killers allegedly typed that up, and so police would think that that was a suicide note, something that anyone could have with access to that laptop. And then there was the blood writing on the wall, written on the living room wall in capital letters, Allahu Akbar, in blood. Now this is something right out of a Charles Manson story here, but it was Comel's blood, the wife. Her blood, it was tested and found out that it was her blood that David allegedly wrote. Now, once again, no fingerprints, nothing tying him to writing that blood. David typically writes in lowercase as far as the handwriting analysis, never writes in all uppercase. This was all uppercase. In fact, it looked like a left-handed person wrote it, and David is right-handed. And then in the office, there's a notepad, a spiral notepad with a pen next to it that says, "Submit to Allah now." Written in pen, looks like David's handwriting, looks like David actually wrote it. But those were the various notes that were left behind. So investigators came in and thought, wow, we have a gun lying here next to this man's left hand. He wrote all these messages, and obviously he must have killed everyone. And looking through the basement of the house, they see all of this FEMA, Homeland Security, Gray State, anti-police, kind of radical extremist things. I think they would have looked at him without knowing who he was. Probably thought the guy was nuts. There was some open marijuana on the bedroom dresser, conveniently left out, I think, as part of the staging to direct the investigators' minds that someone was high when they did this, and they pinned it on him and shut the case and closed up the case. So all of these things were very, very strange, but I don't know if someone created that playlist specifically for that, or if that was already in his music box on his Apple, on his MacBook. But that was what was playing when investigators came in. It was still playing in a loop.
Yeah, what really was striking to me is that, of course, they saved that for last in the documentary because it's almost like the final nail in the coffin to anybody that's us watching this thing. It was their attempt to be like, yes, of course, totally he did it, because who would know to go into his iTunes and look for a playlist or spend time making a playlist? It's just that's not anything anyone would do. And in my opinion, unless it's someone who knew him and someone who, worked on Gray State, perhaps even. I mean, someone who knew to look for something like this, to have it playing on his computer. And, did they do this before the fact and have them tied up or something? Or did they kill all of them and then do this? And now, as far as the missing body parts, I flipped through a lot of the photos. It's kind of hard to tell. I don't know who took these photos, but they're terrible at their job, because everything that I looked at that looked like a body part or looked like anything, it's like way off on the corner of the shot, and in like 90% of 90 of the percent of the photos is just like carpet and things like that. I mean, can you guys speak to the reason why the evidence is so terrible in this case?
Go ahead, Greg. Oh, is Greg
sorry,
there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you repeat that, please?
Oh, yeah, I was just saying, I was looking through like these hundreds of photos on your website from the crime scene, and they're awful. Like, in terms of quality, it seems like the person shooting these photos was like making it a point not to direct the camera at anything they were supposed to be looking at. It's all like weird, off on the side, slightly cut off pictures of things. Like, what can you make of all that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we got 464 photos, and then we got other photos later on, but and there are 4 different cameras. So
I can jump in there, Greg. Christian, as far as the comment, here's what I think, because I saw the same, very much the same thing. We received all these photographs of the crime scene via a FOIA request, and looking at them, they look just like a lot of just photos in every room, upstairs, downstairs, each of the rooms, and also the main crime scene, which is the living room. And then when someone got a hold of the audio, the police audio of the police responding to the scene, the first thing that they captured their mind was when they went around back, the officer said the rear slider patio door is unlocked and slightly ajar. And that was never mentioned in the police reports until someone grabbed that audio. And so one thing I did notice in looking at the detective photographs is that there was 15 photos of the front door, all from different angles, showing there was no break-in. Front, the back, the side angle, the door opened. It showed all these evidence that there was no forced entry into the home. And I know they have to take those, photos, but we already know that the access to the home was open because of the rear slider that was unlocked and slightly left open 1/4 of an inch. And this is January in Minnesota, and that rear slider was open with the dog running around in the house for 3 weeks. So the photographs themselves we've been able to delve into them a little bit with the detail by zooming in on some of these things, and that's where we saw a lot of things that just didn't make sense. There was a knife at the scene, a knife, and then the weapon wasn't photographed where it was at the scene. It was photographed sitting on a table with the magazine out and the bullets ejected, and the various shots of the pistol just laying there. Now it was his gun. David did own this .40 caliber handgun, and it was registered to him. But no fingerprints he didn't have any fingerprints on his own weapon that was found.
Huh.
So things like that.
Yeah,
we started.
Of course he would. I mean, if it's your, I mean, if you take fingerprints from any of my guns, of course my fingerprints are going to be all over them. Granted, all of the photos and videos that we saw in the documentary that he was like shooting, kind of prepping, he took a lot of footage of himself. And typically when he was holding firearms, he was usually wearing those like Oakley combat gloves. But nevertheless, I'm sure he takes his things to the range from time to time, and I doubt he cleans it with bleach after every time he uses the thing.
Yeah, so that's all very interesting, because he's very much into his guns and his weapons, and like Greg said, he was in the U.S. military, served a couple stints, one in Iraq, one in Afghanistan, and did a lot of shooting and training, and was very much a producer and very artsy and creative in his film background. Film was his life, so he made it very obvious that he recorded stuff all during the day, whether it was his daughter, whether it was a family vacation, whether them just sitting around having dinner or eating ice cream. David had his camera out filming and looking for that shot and looking for that. That's just the way his mind operated. So they did show a lot of those clips in that documentary.
Yeah, I found that. I mean, it just very convenient and unusual. I mean, not like saying anything's wrong with what he was doing, but I mean, you see footage of like a GoPro of him at the gym, like working out and this and that. And I was just thinking to myself, kind of being a new documentary filmmaker myself, I was like, man, like how great is it to do a documentary about a subject that is just constantly filming themselves, that you can have all this B-roll to work with, and you don't have to deal with like hiring drone operators to get all these, just kind of fill shots. That is about 60% of most documentaries these days. They didn't need any of that. He had so much. So it was very interesting. I want to talk about a little bit. One of the things that Gray State really uses to try to question the motives and the morality and the headspace of the victim is they're using these audio clips, and almost like he had these like note to self situations where he was talking about how he was going to approach people trying to fund the film, and it was this very kind of like Hollywood schmoozy, very manipulative sounding kind of narrative that he was using, almost as if he would be like recording himself talking, pitching the idea, just giving this persona, so he could then listen back and critique his pitch and things like that. And then when they played that for, I think someone, a film company that was going to take on Gray State, they were just like, that's disgusting. Because he even talks about how like people in the liberty movement, Alex Jones, InfoWars people, they're a bunch of schmucks. We're going to take their money and this and that. It was pretty messed up. I mean, I'm not going to lie. When I heard that, I'm like, oh, damn, like this is going to be hard for me. I'm really curious to know how you hear that. Do you have any notes on any of that?
Well, I think Greg, was it 13 terabytes of data? Was it?
Yeah, 12 or 13.
So police went through and part of the investigation, they collected all these hard drives and camera equipment and laptops and computers and phones. And so when they added it all up, there was roughly 12 to 13 terabytes of data to go through. And so they assigned a special task force. Outside Apple Valley, there's a Dakota County Electronic Crimes Task Force. So they assigned this to them just to go through all of this data of the recordings, the audio, and the video. And what I think is the reason part of this propaganda-based documentary was shoved out there to get into the mainstream is to really paint this evil picture of this nutcase, David Crowley. And what they did, it's my opinion that they cherry-picked all of the videos to pick. The ones used in the movie itself all depicted David in kind of a crazy, not too bright, it didn't point him in a good light, let's put it that way. The clips that were used were all very questionable, and they could have had hours and hours of him being a good dad, a good father, a good husband, and working with his staff and his team on this project. But they took, various, like a temper tantrum of the daughter in the basement. They used that,
right.
And it was all taken out of context, and so they put in these the clips they included were the very bizarre ones, like him talking to himself to try to pitch to these producers what to do and how he could possibly get it done and get it funded. and then talking to what are good ways to get funding. Liberty Movement, it's a good way to get people to open up their wallets, I think he mentioned. And all of those, I think, were him saying those things. Those were true comments. But the bigger picture is, why did the film documentary crew elect to use that footage in particular? That's the question.
Absolutely, and I can probably answer it with fair certainty. When you look at who they chose to interview, I mean, other than you guys, which I think it's also really interesting that you guys have the most to say about this compared to anyone else in the documentary, yet they show you for 30 seconds in the beginning of the movie, and then about another 30 seconds around the end of the movie, when this documentary could have been essentially what a Gray Stage, Greg Fernandez's ongoing video series, which I'm sure most of you have not seen yet. You need to go to YouTube, check out Greg Fernandez Jr.'s Gray Stage. He has a whole playlist, and I'm about 3% into it, and it's riveting stuff. It's breaking down all the photos, the BCA data request files. It's just hundreds of pages of stuff that I've just been flipping through very frantically to prepare for this show. And you guys have so much more information on what actually happened than this documentary wanted to portray. Then they have, I don't even know, that one guy that was watching the video of the daughter talking about the room being full of blood, and then he was like, "You want to know what I really think?" Who is that guy? He's just some kind of liberal, doesn't understand. He has nothing to do with any of this as far as I saw, and I think that's where this film was good. You say it's a California-based company. California, I mean, a lot of these people over there, they're in on it. They're globalists. They want a new world order. They think pedophilia is okay, and I mean, they are the enemy, you could say. Most of California that is being indoctrinated. You have Hollywood, pedowood going on out there and stuff, and so I think you have this kind of lefty, straight out of film school, trying to prove something that these people that are against globalism, against the police state, against everything that, in our opinion, as libertarians and independents, real Americans, believe that we should be against. They think that we're the enemy. They think that we're a bunch of gun-toting crazies and that we're just going to go unhinged. And so when they saw the official report, they were like, oh, of course that's what happened. And they then took that narrative and just tried to make that work.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Absolutely. And they're always using this stuff. They're always using this for gun rights, to take away people's guns. They're not interested in taking away everybody's guns because they still want their guns, but they don't want us to have guns at that point. And I think there was even some stats, Dan. Wasn't there some stats that included this in gun violence? That called this a case of gun violence and some other crazy stuff, or am I just imagining that?
Yeah, you got to think of the quote that says, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And so when they heard about the case, they were able to, I think, put this documentary together to serve two purposes. One would be to cement the official narrative that the Apple Valley Police Department gave, saying that David did this. And number two was to put together a documentary like this to discredit all conspiracy theorists as a whole and consider them all wacky, loony, crazy types of folks. And so that, to me, if this was done that way on purpose, with that much of a propaganda slant to it, it was more than likely funded as a Operation Mockingbird, CIA-funded project to do this on purpose with the propaganda slant. And so that leads me to believe that this was done. This was an operation to get this project out there and make it go and try to get it to go mainstream, to discredit this entire crowd and to discredit David.
I wonder if
Absolutely.
that's why everybody went silent, right? I never understood that, why all these people just kind of went silent. And I mean, you have David Crowley talking about how he doesn't want to be like all of these other people. He's talking about, giving his film, he's doing it for free, right? And I don't know. To me, it just does not seem like a guy who is about to snap, as that clip said. And that clip really bothers me for many reasons. But there's no way. I mean, how do they know? How do the cops know that David wrote in Kamel's blood? How do they know that David actually wrote that? Things like that we're just supposed to just take it at face value and keep on going. There's nothing to see here. And I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of it in the alternative sector. That's where the disappointment really has hit me hard, because, man, I thought this was a slam dunk case for anybody who wanted to cover it, for anybody who could make a good film. And that's what I was hoping that this film was going to do. I was hoping it was going to give us some closure, some answers, and it didn't do that. And so, yeah, of course, it seems like it wasn't meant to ever do that. But you know what? It's created more people looking at this case, so that the documentary continues to help us.
Yeah, that's a good point, Greg. The way it was pitched to us, Christian, it was pitched to Greg and I, the fact that they were watching our YouTube videos and some of our discussion videos about this case, and we got approached by saying we're going to do a documentary on this case, and we'd like to put everything to bed, solve this case, and then we want to get you guys involved because you two are the two following this case outside of the law enforcement community, and we think we can make this go big budget. They premiered this at the Tribeca Film Festival. And so they said, we're going to come in with the film crew and interview you guys, and then also go to the crime scene in Apple Valley, Minnesota, and interview family, friends, and really try to get to the guts of what really happened here, because the way I was presented to me, that the film crew also knew it was a cover-up, or it was a staged scene. So I signed up. I said, sounds good. Let's get this thing done. Greg was a little more apprehensive by saying, I don't know what their ulterior motive was. I twisted his arm a little bit, and then he signed up. We did it, and they came and interviewed him for 2 hours at his place, me for 2 hours at my place. And then when the video was done, we got basically used. They showed 30 seconds of clips between us, cherry-picking only the clips that made us look bad and look nuts. And then they heavily used the footage that made David look bad, and then the rest of the family and friends that were interviewed agreeing with the official narrative. And so we got essentially used on this project. So I think Greg was right at the beginning that they were not out to get the truth out there, and the documentary does need to be made on this case the right way. I
completely agree, and I would like to do it. I mean,
I think do it, man. I was just going to say.
The three. I think that this is our first meeting of our new documentary, essentially, because what you said, Greg, is exactly right. I've been disappointed by quote unquote activists, quote unquote the truth community. Where are they? I've been doing this. We started federaljack.com back in 2005, and then we had something about 1,000 people helping out. We were a student organization, and then after that, I got injured. I moved up here to Central Florida. I tried to start stuff up here, and no one cares about anything in the Orlando area. There's like 5 or 6 of us, and we're a tight-knit group. And that's it. And essentially, it's Sacred Elves. It's our punk band. And most of these, young people that are in the music scene, that they're social justice warriors and they care about this and that. It's like when you try to talk to them about things that are really important that affect all of us, like civil liberties, police state, false flag operations, things like that. They're like, oh, yeah, conspiracy theories. Like, they're so indoctrinated. And this is the counterculture. These aren't normies. These aren't people that have 9-to-5 jobs and wear suits and stuff. This is the counterculture. And then anybody that is any sort of activist and stuff, they're all like communist, leftist leaning, socialist. They think AOC is the next. They want AOC and Bernie to run the country, And then meanwhile, it's like, no, like, what about like Candace Owens or something? Like, I want her to run. That'd be fantastic. But anyone that supports libertarian ideas, anyone that supports stuff like that, like they say things to me like, oh, your alt-right is showing, and it's like, alt-right. I'm a libertarian. I'm in the middle. I'm against the left-right paradigm. And this is the same kind of stuff that Alex Jones has been talking about for a long time. That, where is this activist truth movement? I'm calling all of you out. If you're listening to this, you're a little bit woke for finding us and actually taking the time to listen. Thank you. But we need your support. And it's more than just like donating, which nobody does. And it'd be fantastic if we even got like $1 to $5 here or there. That'd be great. We'll get like one person every couple months that will drop like, $100, and man, that keeps us going, barely. We skate by. But more than that, like, where is your act? I want you to show up to a protest. I want you to show, when we have an event, drive out, show up. And, there's nothing really going on. And it's just year after year, I get older, and I'm still fighting for the same cause, and it just gets very disappointing where, you'll see people that might get interested, and they'll disappear after a couple of years, and you have to wonder, like, did they get to them, or did they just, like, in the Matrix, decide that they would rather go back to sleep? They want to bite into that steak. They know it's not real, but it tastes good, so they're just going to, tune out and join the mainstream. And I get that a lot of this stuff is triggering, and I honestly think that, it might have even been possible that the creators of A Gray State had the best of intentions, but as they started really getting into the nitty-gritty, once you start looking at those crime scene photos, once you start really, like, I'm sure they got haunted by the whole thing, and if you're not strong enough, you're just going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to go with the official narrative because I just want this thing to be over with. And I think that if they weren't from the get-go, yeah, exactly. If you don't have it in you, your mental health is more important, right?
Yeah, but don't come after us. Don't stand in our way for people who do want to find out what the truth is. Don't do that. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's exactly what they do. Where anytime you bring up stuff like this, or you even have questions about like vaccinations, or you have questions, you share a report about something that it's like, oh man, this doesn't look good. They're just like, oh, here we go, tinfoil hat, all the memes, and it's like they are ashamed in themselves that they don't have the strength, they don't have the courage to stand up for something. And even though people might laugh at you, people might discredit you, call you the devil, call you all kinds of, I get called all kinds of things, man. And it's just like, you're just mad at me because you wish that you could do this. You wish that you had the courage to be like, yeah, I'm going to go against the grain on this one, guys, and I'm ready to go out swinging because all of you guys, like crabs in a barrel, are trying to bring me down when I've been doing nothing but all of your things and stuff, whether I might, agree or 100% or whatever. I'm supportive. I'm like, yeah, you're trying to put something back into the world. That's cool, and you have my support. Meanwhile, you have just a lot of people that are just trying to tear you down. But darkdocs.com, we're working on several documentaries right now, and we'd like to take this one on too. Right now we're working on a documentary called Exposing Pedo Swim. I've been researching Adult Swim, and in particular Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, They're co-creators of Rick and Morty, and these guys have been making hardcore, sadistic, murder, pedophile cartoons that are available on their Vimeo channel right now. We've backed up their whole archive because there's some criminal stuff in there. They even use like the PBS Kids logo repetitiously at the beginning and end of episodes to kind of make the joke for like two girls in one cup that has like hardcore, like gory scenes. The whole show is about a cup living with two girls that are trying to get them to piss and shit inside of it and all kinds of other nasty things. But they're slapping the PBS Kids logo on there, and they're talking about on their Twitter about how in an alternate reality, Rick and Morty have a very happy, healthy, consensual sexual relationship. And that's after they made the Doc and Marty cartoon, the precursor to Rick and Morty, that is entirely about blowjobs being given from Rick or Morty to Doc in order for the time travel car to work. It's disgusting, and it's part of an agenda to, show this stuff to kids and act like, oh, it's funny, what's the big deal? So we're working on that. And we put out, of course, Sacred Out There here to Save the World, which is our band's tour documentary, going from Florida to the Bohemian Grove last summer, and we made a conspiracy road trip out of it. We stopped by the Denver airport, and we filmed all of those really creepy globalist murder, a bunch of children in caskets, murals that they have out there, and then how the Denver airport put out a whole thing about conspiracy theorists and, trying to discredit anyone talking about it. We went to Boys Town, Nebraska, and showed what it looks like today, and went into the museum, all kinds of weird stuff going on in there. But we love it. It's all very low budget, and we're totally happy with that. Most of it was shot with $12 spyglasses from the Wish app and our cell phones, and that's it. And that way, we don't have to go out and crowdsource. We don't need GoFundMe. We don't need thousands of dollars. That documentary cost us whatever it costs to put gas into our vehicles, and maybe $10-20 and a couple of like toys that we use to record things with. We're using a hacked version of Sony Vegas Pro I've had for over a decade, and we released the DVDs ourselves. It's not on any, it's like, and that's the only way you're going to get a true product. And the more people donate to darkdocs.com and Eternal Affairs Media, the quality is going to go up, because we're going to take that money and we're going to buy nicer cameras and nicer things and be able to go out and do new things. So again, if you see value in these kinds of things, please donate. But man, we would like to, I love the title you came up with, Greg, The Gray Stage, because when you look at these crime scene photos, it's so staged. Everything is put in the right place, and it looks like that David Crowley put all this stuff together. It's staged to look like the perfect murder suicide. But if I was doing a murder suicide, or anybody that I would imagine, you're not in a very OCD, everything has to be perfect. And I think that's another reason why in A Gray State, they kept railing on, oh, he's a perfectionist. If he had any flaws, he was a control freak. Everything had to be his way. They were trying to put that into your head, almost in a very subliminal way, the whole film, in order for you to, once you see the end of the film, be like, oh, of course. Well, it's so spoon-fed to you. And that is so suspect to me, that it was staged by somebody else that knew him very well. And I want to get a little bit into that. I came across, right before we got on the air, on your site, Greg, some of the last posts that were on Facebook from David, where he was saying that the film's going to come out, and you guys are friggin' sweet. I hope this film makes you all proud. I would try to do a private screening or something exclusive, but hearing the news every 8 I don't think we have the time. And then what was really
that's for the documentary David was working on.
Right, it was like a documentary about the making of the film, right?
Correct.
Right. And then one of the comments underneath that was, "You need to call me. I'm all good with getting out free intact. I brought up that initially. Is kind of weird phrasing there, but it's released."
I think he meant in fact, but yes.
Yeah. Oh, yes. But if it's released before my court, you may send me to prison instead of beating my case. For real, though, David Crowley, call me. And then he responded, "I don't have any of your tax talk in there, Sean, my man. Don't sweat it. This movie is meant to send other people to prison." So, I mean, that right there, you have this guy that I guess was talking about some weird tax thing. I saw you spoke about that a little bit. Would you like to elaborate on your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's from Sean Wright, who is also in that film, who had a big hand in that film, was behind the scenes involved in that project. So, and he was worried that David Crowley was going to put his tax stuff into this film. And of course, David didn't do that. But Sean still had to pay some fines for taxes. So he still found out the hard way that you got to pay your taxes. Now that was weird because that was on December 9, 2014, and this is when this is. I mean, they say David Crowley probably killed. They say everybody was probably dead by December 26th. Okay, this is December 9th. Sean Wright claims to be very close with David. If he's so close with David, why is Sean Wright writing his own phone number on this post? On this public Facebook post, Sean Wright is actually writing it there. Oh yeah. So you can trace all of this film goes back to the same cast of characters, the same people that are trying to tell us there's nothing here, don't worry about it, don't look at it, because you don't want Department of Homeland Security or the FBI looking down on you. It's all threats, and it's all veiled threats. But this just really shows that a lot of the stuff that Sean Wright said is not true. And he's not the only one. He's a very, very small actor in this whole stage, right? In this whole thing. Whether you think the crime scene was staged by David Crowley or staged by somebody else, to me, this is a staged scene. The only question is who staged it. And if it's not David Crowley, then it obviously has to be somebody else. So the whole Sean Wright thing, and this post was very, very strange, because this was a post that was actually taken down after David Crowley died. Well, who had access to this? And why was this post taken down, period? Did David take it down?
Yeah, so someone got onto David's computer, maybe after the murder, going through to scrape anything that would point to them.
You wouldn't need to get on his computer, right? You would just need to know his username and password.
Yeah, but if you didn't know his username and password, the only way would be if you went onto his laptop and it was already logged in, which most of us stay logged into Facebook. I mean, so you don't have to log in every single time. I'm a little more paranoid. I log in and out like all the time and change my passwords because, like, I know better. Yeah.
But remember, David's password was in the hands of the authorities as evidence at that point. So someone logged in under David Crowley's personal Facebook wall, and there was a handful of posts deleted from his own wall. And the question is why, and the question is who? Who did that?
Well, I like where you're going, and I'm almost picturing, if we're going to put out this Gray Stage documentary, calling it the Gray Stage, I'm almost. I love like the graphic you use, Greg. It's just like this very old-fashioned looking, almost Shakespearean stage. And now we're talking about the actors on the stage. Now we have this Sean person. Let's talk about some other. I like to name names because when people are like, "Oh, who is involved? Who's guilty? Who is they?" I'd like to know some names. So you want to go drop some names and how they're involved and how they might be suspects in this murder, because that's exactly what I'd like to do with this documentary. Greg, did we lose you?
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I would say the one name is the first thing we have to remember on a case like this is that there was two sides of who thought did this. If David didn't do it, everyone else thought that the government did. Some black operation came in, some wet work team came in. It was a professional hit. They wanted him out because of his movie, and that's not
right.
what Greg or I have ever said at all. Now, they use that to call us conspiracy theorists because some dark entity came in and did this. After we started getting accused of some of those things, we said our focus needs to be on the evidence and the evidence only, and let the evidence talk, because too many people have their theories and what they think happened. So we started, Greg and I and the other members on the Justice page have started going through all the details in fine print of all the evidence, and so what it leads what in my mind specifically, I don't think it was the government who did it, or a wet work operation or a professional hit, because this was, number one, it was too sloppily done, and number two, it was overstaged. The scene was overstaged, and the people that David was having his problems with toward the end of his life was the people in his very inner circle with the project. Now, when the crime came out, the narrative that was heavily pushed, was that David was despondent about not getting this contract. David was down in the dumps about not getting his movie deal done from Hollywood. And so when we stripped out the fact and went right to the source, and I did an interview with the president of MEG Productions, the Michael Entertainment Group, that was the group that signed David on to an agreement to turn his script into a movie series or a TV series. So he did, in fact, have a contract in place. And so we really started to question those who were pushing the narrative that he was down in the dumps about not getting this deal or not getting the funding to go big because this was his lifelong project. So he started looking internally at the members of his own team. And his co-star, or the leading actor, was by the name of Danny August Mason, was going to be the lead actor in this play, in this movie or the script. Now, David and Danny co-created this project called The Gray State, and both were heavily influenced. When he got this deal, when David was working with his lawyer team, they had him send out legal documentation to release others' rights from it, so David would have 100% ownership of the script and the rights of this movie deal, of this script, for instance. And so he sent it to one of his partners, and that person signed it off and was free to go. Danny August Mason didn't do it and never did do it, never ever signed it. And in fact went back and forth with David on an email exchange that we later acquired, trying to work a deal where he would get something in return out of it, because he says, I'm not going to give up my rights if you're working on this $30 million deal, and I put all my blood, sweat, and tears into this. You're not going to just cut me loose. So there was some friction there leading up to the murders. And so one was this individual, Danny August Mason, that has been very, very odd in his behavior in the aftermath of this murder. One of the things with him, and I'm not calling out any suspects, I'm just calling out people that are persons of interest. I would consider, if I was a detective, he would be one of your first people you'd want to contact. When they interviewed Danny August Mason, he said he was only an actor in the film and didn't have a business he wasn't involved from a business perspective and didn't have an ownership of the project. So the cops interviewed him, and off he went on to the next person. But if they would have known that he did have a business interest, he was vested in the success of this company, and he had the greatest amount to lose if the project went dead, or if he signed off his rights. There's your motive. There's your motive right there. And so they went back and forth on this email exchange, and they both dug their heels in, and next thing you know, David Crowley is dead, which raises the question as to why the entire family had to be killed. If someone didn't like David or didn't like his work or was out to get him, he could have been dispatched of and disposed of very easily. You could have easily killed him. But the question remains on a case like this is, why was he, David, and all of his remaining heirs killed on a $30 million asset that someone had? Well, the script now is going to fall into the hands of his family. And David Crowley's older brother, Danny Crowley Jr., was very good friends with all these other cast of characters, and sure enough, the script fell into the lap, and that's how they got into the family. They were going to take it and run with it, and in fact, 5 months after the killings, Danny August Mason went to the Secretary of State of Minnesota and created a brand new business called Gray State Universe LLC, and was taking that script to go to pitch it to Hollywood movies. And this was 5 months after grieving. Actually, it was May, Greg, I believe. So 4 months after the bodies are found, Danny August Mason is spending his time, along with David Crowley's older brother, to set up a company to pitch this project to make some big bucks off it. And so that's why I think, and that's just my personal opinion, is why you didn't have to take out David. The only way for this to work is to take out all three members of the remaining heirs of the family, and it's going to land back in the family's back in their lap to do whatever they want with. And Danny Crowley, the older brother, was not talking to David Crowley since August of that last year of his life. They got into some rift about something, and were no longer speaking. And I think when it got toward the end, I think David Crowley started realizing that there were snakes in his inner circle, and he started pulling away and started isolating himself. Now, they mention the isolation in the movie, but they use that to say that he was despondent and was bordering on killing himself. So you're putting that shift in once again, but he was not despondent, and someone, whoever one of them, they needed all three of them dead, so that script, if David was killed, would not fall to Comel, the wife, and if both of them were killed, it's going to fall to their daughter. So there's your reason, I believe, that you needed all three of these people dead. So the most valuable asset that this young family had was that script. That was the most valuable asset they had. They didn't live in a big house and drive big cars. They were a young married couple. But once word got out, you're sitting on a $30 million script potentially. And you're going to write off the main character and the co-creator of the project and get him out by legal means, get him out. Now, that's not going to sit well. And is that going to lead someone to murder? I don't know. People have murdered for less.
It's just damn petty.
I would just like to add that. Well, I mean, and this doesn't mean that Dan is saying that that's what happened. We're not saying that that's it.
Of course not. We're speculating here.
But I mean, the whole thing is, he's good at just laying all of these different things out, and then people kind of take certain things and they kind of twist it, or they just clip it. You know what I mean? They just use certain quotes. And that's what the whole documentary is. To me, the whole thing, except for maybe our parts, everything just seemed very, very twisted and just taken out of context. So I think knowing that, I wanted to make sure going into this thing, because Dan had to do more than twist my arm. He almost had to put me in a chokehold, from what I remember. But when I did want to get involved with this I just figured, well, you know what? We're just going to be honest. We're going to be truthful. We're going to tell them exactly what we've been researching. We're going to give them all of the data and hope that they do something with it. We're going to tell them that the police left that house without 2 very important bullets. We're going to tell them that they left that house without looking up and seeing a bullet hole in the living room ceiling. How is that possible? And they would not put that in there. Those would have been the smoking guns that would have sunk the whole movie, would have sunk the whole thing. And they can never, ever take that back. So, sorry.
Yep. Oh man, I'm just flipping through the photos here of the family and stuff. I just linked the Justice for David Crowley page, as well as the Justice for David Crowley and Family group on this, and anyone listening, definitely join the group, like the page, and because this is just an ongoing, just awful wormhole of just really loose ends. It's all just loose ends. This is probably one of the most messy cases that I've seen. Where you almost get overwhelmed and you don't know where to start. With all of this, we definitely have our work cut out for us, and you've definitely done a lot of work, moving forward to get started with us for sure.
And this is all Dan's fault, by the way. Dan started all of this. All his
yeah, he got you into this.
Yep, he got me into this. I did not want to look into this. I was not a fan of David Crowley. I didn't really want anything to do with this, but he asked me to, and I looked into it, and that was pretty much it. But I always like to blame him. It just makes me feel better.
Oh, thank you. Greg, a good point you just brought up about the bullets and the detectives not tying out the number of bullet casings from this .40 caliber to the number of bullet fragments that they left the house with on the day that they wrapped up the crime scene. The house is roped off for one day, and then they open it basically back up after the cleaners came in. But the day that they left, they found that 6 rounds were fired, and they left with 4 bullet fragments on this, and the hollow points were used. For some reason, you want to kill yourself. I don't know why you'd use hollow point .40 caliber, but that must have been to what David's plans was when he killed himself, to use a hollow point. So they left with 4 bullets. Police thought they had 1 bullet from David, 1 from Rania, 1 from Kamel, and 1 they found lodged in the basement wall that had been shot from the upstairs directly into the floor and landed in the basement wall. They dug that out, and they left with 4 bullet fragments. Now, they also had 6 casings laying on the floor. So they didn't do the math. They left, and they treated this as a double homicide followed by a murder. Now, the cleaning crew comes in, and they're lifting up the rug in the living room and pulled the rug back, and a bullet fragment fell out from beneath the rug. They didn't want to touch it. They call the police. They show up and says, yep, this is bullet fragment number 5. They're still 1 short, but they found bullet fragment 5 2 days later. And so when they get all these things tested, they find out that the mushroomed bullets, 3 of them had Comel's blood, DNA, tissue, and hair inside that mushroomed bullet, Comel, suggesting, I'm not saying, but suggesting she was shot 3 times. One of the bullet fragments had Rania, the daughter, the 5-year-old. Rania's blood, hair, and tissue in that bullet fragment, that mushroom bullet that went through her skull, was attributable to her. And then one in the basement that didn't have any human tissue on it, that was fired into the wall. Which, once again, if you're shooting your family, why would you need some kind of a warning shot or a shot into the floor while standing there? So that seemed odd. And also, if you're part of a pact, have a pact with your wife to kill her, I don't see why you'd need to have a shoot her 3 times. But they left there without having a single bullet of David's. No David, the kill shot of David Crowley himself wasn't found. They come back for a 3rd time. This is late February of 2015, after someone in the police report says, we were inspecting a hole in the ceiling, and we can't believe that you guys missed a hole in the ceiling. They went up into the attic and found a bullet, a fragment of a mushroomed .40 caliber bullet. Went to the lab, didn't find David's blood, tissue, or hair on it. Not a speck of blood. Did find David Crowley's touch DNA on that bullet fragment. So they said, well, this must be his. Case closed. Now, we've had people look into that and saying that if you're shot in the skull with a hollow point, it's going to mushroom out and grab brain matter, tissue, blood, hair, skin, and all inside of that small microscopic bullet fragment, you're going to have all those things. There's no way a bullet that went through someone's skull is not going to have anything on it. It's going to be clean, except touch DNA. Now, David had plenty of rounds of ammunition and plenty of guns in the house, so he probably had his touch DNA on all those live round bullets at one point. But the Apple Valley Police Department closed the case with never having the fingerprints on the weapon of David Crowley, a gun laying by his left hand, no bullet fragment of anything that went through his head at all, if he was even shot, and closed it up just like that. So there's lots of strange things here. Now, the city of Apple Valley is about 46,000 in population, kind of a small to mid-sized city here in Minnesota. But they average 1 homicide per year. 1. So they get a triple homicide, and it's not out of the question. I think it's fair to say that they were over their head on a case like this. And so even if they were investigating this thing honestly, they just assumed that he did it, and maybe there wasn't a cover-up. But who knows? There's no way this would have been done this sloppily. And then once they got caught with so many inconsistencies here, we feel, Greg and I both feel, that they pretty much dug their heels in and says, well, we're not going to admit our mistakes now. The case is closed. We're not going to look into it. And since then, we've been sending the law enforcement authority and the captain and the police captain and the chief several more forms of evidence that has come to light recently, including phone records, text messages, and the like. That packet of information has also been sent to the Minnesota Attorney General. And no one, and I repeat, no one is interested in looking at this case.
Yeah, I mean, because I could totally see to them, they're just like, crazy conspiracy nut, you know, all this Ron Paul, bunch of FEMA stuff, guns everywhere. He went crazy, killed his family, case closed, we got stuff to do. You know, I'm not going to, you know, be opening up cold cases. And, you know, and I mean, to be fair, that a lot of, you know, closed cases, cold cases, you know, not even as absurd as this one. You know, people, you know, they never want to let go, so I'm sure they get bombarded with all kinds of stuff, so it just becomes all white noise to them. You know, it's like not even necessarily like some kind of, like you said, some kind of cover-up or conspiracy, but I could definitely see them being like, look, we just don't have the time or resources for this, or forget it. And that's the unfortunate thing about law enforcement, and why, you know, I respect people in law enforcement that decided to do this very thankless job that, you know, doesn't pay very well, and it's gritty and it's horrible, and I considered going into it myself, but at the same time, it really comes down to it comes down to citizens doing the due diligence. I mean, you guys are really doing law enforcement's work for them, you know, and you guys don't get paid a cent for it. You're doing it really out of just the grace of your hearts and stuff, and I really appreciate it. And it's really nice to meet people like you that, you know, it makes me feel like I'm not alone. And when I'm up at 4 a.m. and, you know, I need a shower and I'm just like poring over these documents, and sometimes I just stop and laugh to myself, and I'm like, who am I doing this for exactly? Because, this is why we do it, because there are questions that need to be answered, and then this is just another one of these X-Files that we have to deal with.
Yeah, just to point out, too, that this is Dan once again, that I was not a fan of gray states. I didn't even know who that was or what that was, and I never heard of David Crowley in my life. And so I don't have a dog in this fight at all. And people ask, why are you so vested? Why are you so interested in a case that has no impact on you? And I said, well, when it involves a 5-year-old girl and a wife, an innocent family of 3, brutally murdered, I said, I don't know if that sits well with you or not, but it certainly does not sit well with me. So that's why we've been pushing this ever since, and really keeping up on it and making sure this information gets out there, because a lot of people don't know about it. But when we go to our various YouTube videos and our page, some of the analytics is the majority of after the U.S., it's all Europe following this case. Paris and France and London and Germany are very heavily influenced in this, and we've got members from all over. Last I checked, it was over 45 countries of people following the case that are following this all around the world. So this is a big case, and like you said, they've done a good job to really suppress it here in the U.S. But the Daily News, the Daily News is really one of the first articles that even appeared in this story about this Crowley case. And I live in Minnesota myself, 30 minutes away from the crime scene, and I found out about from the Daily Mail.
Yeah, you see, I mean, it's amazing how suppressed such a big case that has so many loose ends. I mean, this, forget about the Mueller report. Like, this should have been on the mainstream media for like 3 months with like breaking news, and it's like this, it's a big case when they're making it a point not to talk about it. Very similar to like that shooting in Colorado. Now you have a transgender girl and an anti-Trump kid that shot up the school, and now the mainstream media is not talking about it because it doesn't fit the narrative. It's not like a MAGA hat alt-right, and where they spend months on that, and with all the analysis and the political pundits weighing in, whereas you have this one doesn't fit the narrative. It's not a white supremacist. We're not going to talk about that because we can't talk about trans people, this and that. And it's, right there, it has nothing to do with this, but it's a good example of when something doesn't fit the narrative, they're just going to, breeze over it. They're going to put out like 1-2 paragraph article with one photo, and just to say that, oh, we covered it, but no, you didn't. And one of the big questions I have here, of course, being obsessed with the Bohemian Grove, I have anti-Bohemian Grove tattoos all over my body. My band's all Sacred Owls, of course, is all about, our logo is the owl crossed out. And then so, Greg knew I'd get a kick out of the one crime scene photo of Crowley's office, where it looks like he has a scale model of the 40-foot statue of an owl with like the moon altar, where they have the cremation of care ceremony, where, of course, they sacrifice an effigy of a child to the flames every midsummer to rid themselves of a conscience. And when I first saw that photo, it reminded me of this meme that Dee's Illustration put out years ago of the cremation of care playset, and like a kid with a pentagram T-shirt and green hair was like playing with little action figures of Henry Kissinger and George Bush and stuff like that. But that blew my mind. I was wondering, why is there a scale model of this occult symbol of the secret society, which, mind you, is a secret society where global elites, United States political pundits, political figures, ex and future presidents have talked. The Manhattan Project was launched there. We talked about a lot of that on the last show. And they've been involved in human trafficking, rape and murder of children, and all kinds of heinous acts that, kind of are, when I look at these crime scene photos, it feels very reminiscent to the stories being told by Paul Benassi, Troy Boner, Alicia Owens, and the Franklin cover-up by John DeCamp, where, blood is being, things are being written on the walls, bodies are being hacked up and placed in odd ways. Greg pointed out that Crowley's hand was like put into like a certain shape. It's kind of like what 4chan was trolling everyone, like that's a white supremacist hand sign, but it's also like the Phi Beta Kappa. Of course, that Colin Kaepernick, football player, he's a part of that. So there's a lot of photos of a lot of celebrities and stuff with this kind of like AOK sign, and sure enough, his dead body has. I mean, dead bodies don't just die and then your index finger curls up and touches your thumb with like your other three fingers extended. That's not a natural. Typically, it'll just kind of like close up altogether, unless it's palm down, and then they would usually be all out, maybe slightly like pulled in from any crime scene photos I have. So I just wanted to talk about those two things. What do you make of the Bohemian Grove owl playset, as it were, being at in his office, and do you make of anything with that hand signal?
Go ahead, Greg.
Okay, sorry. I had to laugh at the whole thing. Okay, so there's that owl being in the house is either a movie prop. It was something that was given to David. I don't believe that it was something that he worshipped. That was the other thing. So when I first saw that image, I had all of these different thoughts. And it's the most logical one would be that it's a movie prop that he was going to use. Maybe that was going to be part of this whole document or part of David's film that he was working on, But I really don't know. And it's not just about why it was there. It's about also who made that for him. That looks handmade.
It's nice. And it's well done.
Very detailed. Yeah. It's well done. Yeah.
I have a background in architecture. I've done a lot of architectural scale models, and I've seen thousands.
40 feet.
Yeah, and I've seen thousands of photos of the actual owl and the altar, close-up photos. There's the videos shot by employees of the Bohemian Grove that got released, I think, back in 2005 to InfoWars that they played, where you really get up close. They even have video inside of the owl, and you can see the effigy, the skeleton. It's like a metal skeleton on some wood planks that they use to carry it, and then they just wrap that all in flammable, probably fabric or paper, in order to burn it every time and reuse that same skeleton over and over again. And I can say this is somebody that knew you can't make something like that from photos. And if you did, with that level of detail, you must have really spent some time looking at hundreds and hundreds of every little angle, all of the way the stone. It's not a usual shape, this owl. It's more of an obscured. It's not like you see a very distinct beak. It's really just a point. They designed this thing to almost look like a weathered artifact of something that used to have more definition, very similar to the Sphinx or the pyramids, where thousands of years of sands have been beating against it, and now it's just kind of this very amorphic shape of kind of this owl shape. And so it was initially whoever built that thing for the Bohemian Grove designed it, because once you go inside of it, once you see the video of going inside of it, you'll see that it's all just like rebar welded chicken wire, facade, and then they use like a plaster or concrete mix on top of the chicken wire skeletal frame. So it's a movie set item. It's not like something that is actually this like chiseled stone sculpture, kind of like the Georgia Guidestones or something like that. This is something that is a movie prop that is meant to look older than it is, and of course it's been there for probably close to 100 years at this point. So it's already starting to look like what it's supposed to look like. But then with the altar, with the moon, the crescent moon in the front of it, and all of this stuff, this is somebody, whoever designed that thing, they must have had some kind of plans for it, or maybe were involved with the Bohemian Grove. Maybe this is something that was purchased from the Grove or like then sold on eBay. I mean, you could speculate all day, but this is not just something that is available for purchase. This is something that is very specialized and very rare that none of us that have been researching this have ever seen before. And you have a good point that perhaps he's working on this film, and that would be a great asset to have if you're going to be doing kind of like a pan over shot, zooming in on the cremation of care. Maybe that was like going to be part of the film. And if that's the case, then boy, that really is like pointing a lot of fingers again at the Grove and people involved to silence and shut this up. Because hell, you look at, I've been researching Kevin Spacey and how he came out. We have a Dark Docs Digest 2-part episode. We did 2 whole half-hour episodes on breaking down the last couple episodes of the season before the last season. Because the last season, Kevin Spacey was already kicked off of the show. The allegations of underage molestation of multiple children was already out and in the media, and Netflix wanted nothing to do with Spacey, kicked him off of the show, and that's why they just pretty much between seasons killed him off and made it like a weird murder mystery, and his wife became the president. Well, those last couple episodes of the season before last, Kevin Spacey's last episodes, sure enough, were at the Fields of Elysia, where the Crow of Elysia would they sacrifice an effigy of a child to release common woe, and he's out there in the woods trying to make deals, trying to get back into power and this and that, and he's even called out that, of course, at the Bohemian Grove, they say, "Weaving spiders come not here," which means journalists and people that are trying to spin deals and stuff. It's really supposed to be getting rid of all your cares. It's supposed to be 2 weeks of just cavorting, relaxing. They have this whole cremation of care to rid yourself of a conscience. And it's almost like a black magic, what do you call it, in Christianity, like a baptism, where all of your sins are washed away. Instead of washing it away in the waters of Christ, they burn a child to burn your conscience, to burn your cares away. So it's quite literally the opposite of Christianity, what they do out there. And but sure enough, when I saw that episode and I heard about it, I was thinking, oh man, is Kevin Spacey, is Netflix kind of like throwing down, or are they kind of and then after like further analysis, and of course now you have Barack Obama working with Netflix, and I'm like, no, that doesn't sound right either. But yet here we go. Now Kevin Spacey, he's they're taking this case very seriously, and he might be facing some serious jail time. So I'm wondering, whenever people bring up the Bohemian Grove in a negative light, something bad happens to them. So like that's the first thing that struck me. Dan, do you have any perspective on this?
Well, I think once again, we got two things. We've got this little model in his office, and I think that it was, like Greg said, either given as a not as a gift, as a prank gift, or used as a prop. Now, David was very anti-Bohemian Grove, along with the Federal Reserve and Georgia Guidestones and the New World Order and the FEMA camps. He was against all these things, so there would be no way he would have that in good faith in his home. I wouldn't believe he would have pitched it out and gotten rid of it. But like you said, someone made it, a custom made it, and it's very detailed. Now, the other thing, I don't believe detectives in Apple Valley, Minnesota, would have even known what that thing is. Normies, the normies would not even know what that thing is, and they wouldn't, give it a second thought. But if they'd be putting all this together, if you had true investigators out there, true detectives, they would know that David was involved in this kind of thing and start raising some of these questions. They also would know that David had just recently shut down one of his other side businesses to focus on this project, and that side business was called the Bullet Exchange. It was a place that took refurbished gear, police gear, and military police gear, and used it for props in movies and kind of sold secondhand. So when he shut that down, he had his whole basement closet, an extra bedroom, filled with this stuff. And so when first people on the scene come in there, the law enforcement, they're going to see all of this police gear and holsters and guns and ammunition and machine gun lookalikes and things like this down laying on the floor. They thought once again that this guy's a crazy nut job, but he had just sold that business and shut it down and had all this inventory he was trying to get rid of. So you have to really look at all the aspects of this whole case. That Bohemian Grove, who knows what was there, but someone spotted it. It was maybe 3 years into the investigation. One of our new members stopped at that photo and zoomed in and started asking questions. And that's the great thing about getting this new members on the page, is that you get new eyes looking at things from a different perspective, and they see things that we haven't. And Greg jumped on that right away and says, well, that's exactly right. That is a miniature scale drawing of Bohemian Grove, and why in the world would David have that? Now, we haven't seen any evidence of any using that in any of his footage, but then again, the movie was never actually made. They just had this script, and what they did was they did that crowdsourcing or crowdfunding to raise $61,000, the Gray State, and they put together a trailer before the movie was even made, and to this day the movie wasn't made. But they put all that money into a 2 to 3 minute trailer for the Gray State, and then used that to pitch to Hollywood producers to see what they could get and sell it to them. So a lot of the confusion also in this case is that people are thinking, where is the movie? Where is the script? Was it ever released? What happened to the movie? Well, they never made it. And then while David was working on this legal issue that he had with one of his co-workers there, Danny August Mason, everything was kind of put on the back burner. Everything was tabled until he had that legal release. And so David then chose to focus on the documentary. Now, this is different. This is his documentary, not a Gray State from Eric Nelson, but this is the Gray State Project documentary called The Rise. And that's a 90-minute documentary that they were wrapping up that David had planned to release on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day of 2015, and was putting the final touches on that. And he was going to release that for free. And I think that's the other thing we need to look at for the people looking to make money off this. Sean Wright was the main producer of that documentary, and took a lot of time off work. I don't even know if he was working at the time. He was doing this as his full-time job. And when it got out that David was going to release this for free on YouTube, just to get the word out there about the New World Order and what was going on here behind the scenes, that didn't sit well with Sean Wright, because he was thinking that they were going to sell that documentary, The Rise, in stores, online, and everything else. And that was going to be his payday. So we've got him upset about the documentary, Danny August Mason upset about the project itself that he was basically written out of, and you got all these things going on to get this perfect storm, while at the same time, Sean Wright claiming that he was David Crowley's best friend, and they hung out and they did all these things together, and their kids played together. Sean Wright's the one leaving on a Facebook post his cell phone number saying, call me when you get a chance, because this is important about my tax stuff. And so if I have his number, and he would have known to just do an instant message, but by putting that out there on a public comment, his cell number saying, dude, call me. And sure enough, that was in there. That tax stuff was in there. And after the deaths, Sean Wright did end up releasing that documentary called The Rise, with 9 minutes cut out of that production, including the tax talk. So we had a lot of angst and anger and frustration by these main key players leading up to the deaths. And Greg, you can vouch for this. After the family was found, the 3 bodies were found, and before the funeral took place, there was a lot of happy campers in this group. Photos surfacing of everyone smiling. It's almost like had been lifted from their back by having this family killed. Well, at the same time, they were telling us that we need time to grieve. These are our best friend that died, and we knew the family very well. Quit making a mockery of the family and quit investigating it, because we need time to grieve. Well, the next day, we're seeing some of these same characters show up on television interviews and alternate media interviews about this case, looking like they hadn't lost a wink of sleep at all. So it was the behavior in the aftermath which was very big indicator. And one person, actually a cousin of David's, came in anonymously to our group and said that, and she said that memorial service was very strange because the older brother, Danny Crowley, was acting like this was some kind of a party, and everyone was happy and joyous and cracking jokes at the same time. And she said, I found that really disturbing to see all these guys in the Gray State Project all so excited and elated, and as if a monkey was off their back now because of this, the family was killed. So they started, I think, digging their own hole around that point, and then they ended up coming after us in the forms of threats and shutting down the page and shutting down the group and demanding things. So it got to be really strange, to say the least. But the threats started coming, and then they were none too happy that we kept that page up.
No, they were trying to actually take over, right? You had a long period where they were trying to.
Yeah, the other page for the new listeners out there was a page called Justice for David Crowley of Gray State, and that was just a community where people could join up and talk about the case. And the runner of that, the person who ran that page, started getting demands that someone from the Gray State needs to have administrative rights to that page so they can ensure that the truth gets out versus conspiracy theories and alternate narratives. They wanted to clean it up. So this person gave rights to to Sean Wright, and I believe to Danny August Mason too. He allowed them both to be administrators on that Facebook page, and within 2 hours, large chunks of data was deleted and comments removed, and threads were just wiped off of that page. And the next day, I started getting the requests from Danny August Mason and Sean Wright personally, instant messenger, saying you need to give us administrative rights to your page so we can ensure that the truth is out there versus all your stuff. And boy, when I said no, the anger. It was the day of the memorial service. The day of the memorial service. So, well, that'll be fine. I'll see you guys there because I'm looking forward to coming because I'd like to pay my condolences to the Crowley family. And that was when Sean Wright said, you better not dare show your face at that event. We'll have security there as out. And to this day, we haven't given access to that Justice for David Crowley and Family Facebook page, and we've kept and maintained the integrity of honest-to-goodness truth seekers running that show. And this day, they've had multiple Facebook profiles under different guises, fake accounts set up to try to get into that page and become a member. and then and what they do is they just start derailing the conversation and throwing junk out there. So it's been a pretty good effort just to keep that page clean with honest-to-goodness members versus ones with ulterior motives.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to find like an actual copy of, and just to reiterate, so you're telling me that the bodies were found in October? Was that correct?
January 17th.
Oh, okay. Why? Where did I get that October from? I thought that. Oh, because I remember in the documentary they said it was late October when the sister came and.
They were trying to trick you. They were trying to trick you with those dates. See.
Yeah, you see. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Okay. So it was January. Gotcha. So they did release The Rise while he was still alive.
No,
There's
no.
two.
It was a year later, I think.
It was a year later. Okay. All right.
And it is out free, but it's got 9 minutes of key information removed from the version David Crowley had.
Yeah, because on YouTube, I'm just trying to find it now, and there's this is a rough cut, and then you have some people saying that this is not the real movie. Don't watch. Subliminal messages, weird soundtrack, and then there's like a whole thread under that, and then there's all these other ones that are like it seems like clickbait. Like I'm just trying to find like one that's legit. Have you guys seen it? Is there like an actual like decent copy of it out there?
The only good one, Greg, is called I think it's the Rise.wiki is the official one, but they don't have it set up Google Analytics, and it's a poorly done page, so there's not a lot of traffic drawn to that at all. The actual one, which I've seen it myself, that's actually a pretty good documentary, and it should be seen by a lot of people. It's a very anti-NWO, anti-Federal Reserve, Georgia Guidestones, Bohemian Grove type of thing, bankers. And so that's a good documentary, but it's not out there. So when you do a search for it, you're seeing all this other crap that's showing up in the search results, and that does need to be cleaned up because there's a lot of true conspiracy theories out there.
Well, I mean, Dan, you've seen both of them. So you've seen, I mean, all of us have probably seen, not all of us, but there's many of us who have seen the rough cut and this one that was put out after.
Yeah, I've seen them both.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, that's the other thing, right, is there's two different ones. And
the one that was, I'm going to jump on a different phone here. My phone's going to go dead. The one that got out there, that got leaked, there's actually one version that got leaked. The original one that David did that still had Sean Wright's tech stuff in there, it was called the Rough Cut. That one was anytime someone mirrored it or copied it or threw it up onto YouTube as an actual video,
yeah,
that got pulled down due to copyright infringement. And guess who was doing the copyright infringement?
Oh, they got him.
Yeah, guess who was doing the copyright infringement? And that would be Sean Wright.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I see the Rise.wiki, and they have the full movie on here. It's an hour and 58 minutes and 5 seconds. And then there's one that looks like it's in Spanish, and that's like 2 hours and 41 minutes. There's the rough cut one, 2 hours and 39.
Now that one, the rough cut was put out right after David died. So right after David died, there was one guy who put that out, and then it spread, and then he got in trouble and he took it down. But by that time, it was already out there.
That's why I love the internet. That's how we have conspiracy of silence. We would have never had. Yeah. We would have.
That should be in Dark Dogs.
What, the rough cut?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I'm looking for it now, because when we're done with this, it's going on Dark Docs. I'm going to download it, upload it to our server, so when they scrub all of these from YouTube, we're going to have a backup copy, and then they're going to have to come knocking down our door. Because that's why we made DarkDocs.com, because you can't rely on these third-party streaming services. Once they pull that video off of Netflix, once they pull that video off of YouTube, and you just can't get it anymore, if you don't have a hard copy, that's it. And then they can just say, it can just disappear if no one backed it up. And, that's why I think all of us truth seekers with our external hard drives after external hard drives is backed up with this stuff, we really all need to get together and throw it all up on the Dark Docs server, because we have infinite bandwidth. GoDaddy cannot mess with us legally as long as the videos aren't, snuff films, of course, showing actual acts of crime. But, of course, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to archive news reports, documentaries, and things that can be used as evidence in future criminal cases. We're really just trying to be a library, and we're not trying to. The videos we have, some of them are kind of shocking, but it's not for shock value, and we make it a point to not censor anything. So if something is censored on YouTube, it gets the YouTube badge of honor. This video has been banned on YouTube. We'll slap that on the thumbnail. But yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm glad to see that, because you can download some stuff from Vimeo, but this doesn't have any links on the rise.wiki /The Rise Movie. This might be actually hosted on there, and that's pretty difficult to download unless you do a screen capture, and that's kind of crappy. But I do see one that is the right length, and it starts off the same way. So hopefully we can drag that off of Tony Mahoney's YouTube channel.
Tony Maroney.
Yeah, it says Tony Mahoney with an H. Yeah.
Tony Mahoney. Okay. All right.
Yeah, Tony Mahoney has an actual good quality copy on his page. Whereas the Gray State doesn't even have it on theirs, which I find odd. If you release this thing, why don't you even have... You would think you would want the traffic. You'd want the hits.
Because it's civil war. Yeah. Because there's factions. They have factions. The whole Gray State team, there are factions, there are fights, there are legal battles. There's all this stuff behind the scenes going on. And that was probably what was going to happen with David Crowley and Danny Mason. So even if David Crowley was able to create this, was able to make this into a TV series, into like a Game of Thrones, whatever, like a police state Game of Thrones thing or something, even if they were going to do that, they would have had some legal troubles, possibly, from Danny Mason. Possibly.
I mean, I hope this is making the New World Order very happy that, we can't get anything done. I mean, and when I say we, I don't mean Resist the Grove and Dark Docs. We're actually operating fantastically as just 3 or 4 people. But, if one of us gets whacked, boy, would that, mess things up. Because, yeah, I mean, I like being very transparent about operations and that, you're looking at it, buddy. It's just this. Whereas you have all these people that are claiming to, unite the masses of the world to destroy the New World Order, but, they're suing each other, and are you kidding me? I would never
They want
see
to
it,
replace...
right?
Yeah, well, they want to have...
Because they're doing it for money.
So...
They're scumbags. They're doing it for money, and I got to be real, It's man, if David Crowley and his family were murdered by some scumbags or people involved in the project that were trying to take his money, that's despicable. And I can't imagine that he actually did this. I can't imagine the official narrative that he just snapped and stuff like that. But even David Crowley himself, man, I'm not trying to knock a dead man. Really, I'm trying to be as sensitive as possible. But I would never record talks where like I'm practicing to like pitch to Hollywood producers about like how oh, like the stupid libertarians, they're eating this, like, they have the hook, line, and sinker. I mean, we have their wallets, man. Like, I would never say shit like that on tape. Are you nuts? And I'm trying to rationalize it in my head. Like, okay,
so
well,
those
let me
are on
think
the
about
clips? Those are on the video clips?
That's
what he's...
Yeah, dude.
You have to go back and watch that.
Yeah, go on Netflix and watch your
audio
film.
only. Audio.
Are you back?
I really don't want to watch that.
It's heartbreaking because, damn, it's like if we were like in a courtroom.
Go back and watch that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we were in a courtroom and then the other lawyers played that video and I had to now like the prosecutors and now I'm the defendant, I'd be like, objection, that is very damaging to my argument, like in liar.
I would ask for the footage that actually contradicts that, and I would weigh that footage. I would take his social media posts. I would take all of the things that he said positively. Yeah. I would take all of that and I would use that to counter it. And I would also look at all of the whole, and I mean, all of us would too. We're all, we would look at everything in its proper context from start to finish, not just take a little clip here, a little clip there, because we know that's one of the biggest signs. When they just take a little thing here, a little thing there, and they try to build a house of cards, that house falls. Yeah. You can't do that. Go ahead.
And also, to be fair, I'm sitting here listening to this, like trying to rationalize. Well, if there was a sound clip of me, if I was David Crowley saying such things, why would I say them if I didn't really believe that? And it's like, well, he is pitching to Hollywood producers, and I'm sure him of all people knows how corrupt and they don't give a shit about the message. They don't care. It's not like InfoWars, where, I mean, some people even say Alex Jones is like a shill and doesn't really, care, and he's just doing it to sell, ultra male vitality, yada, yada. But if I were, going into the belly of the beast, going to Hollywood and talking to talking to pedophile Steven Spielberg, and to try to greenlight and direct this to make it a big Hollywood blockbuster, I'm gonna act like a scumbag. I'm gonna go in there and be like, I don't buy any of this stuff. But you have this target demographic with huge disposable incomes that will go to the movie, that will buy all the merchandising, so, and in order to sound convincing, if David Crowley is as control freak or methodical and he figures everything out, he's very OCD, well, then he's like, well, man, if I'm going to be lying through my teeth to these Hollywood producers, maybe I should record. He recorded everything, so maybe I should record these conversations, and how I'm pitching it, because you even hear him, he'll say one thing and then he'll be like, no, don't, no, that's not the right word. He's talking to himself. Like, he'll interrupt himself, talk to himself, and be like, no, I would say it this way. And so he's crafting this personality of this sociopath that doesn't care, and they're just all about the money. And man, now that I'm saying it out loud, that sounds more plausible than actually thinking that he, would do such a thing. And then again, they cut it out of context, and then they showed it to the people that he was pitching to, and then they feel insulted, because here this person is trying to, trying to manipulate them, like, imagine it, Greg, if I was like, if these recordings of Christian Coffins being like, oh, when I talk to Greg Fernandez, I'm going to act like I really care about the Bohemian Grove, and, when we meet, I'm going to, it's like, man, that would make you really wonder for a second, and your gut instinct, right when you hear that, you'd probably be like, oh, fuck, Christian's a shill, and you would have every right to in that first moment. And again, like, I saw that, and I rewatched it today, And I should have clipped some of that stuff so we can actually talk about it. I mean, but if we're going to be making this documentary, we're going to do that in the near future anyway. But yeah, man, there is
one thing. I mean, there is one thing on that too, because that's not where the whole story ends. Because Dan was talking about how, and Dan, are you back with us?
I'm back. Yep.
I don't know. Okay.
Right.
Can you talk about when this film showed up? I think it was at the Walker Theater, and they had a Q&A, and I think Eric Nelson had to kind of backtrack and kind of show us that even that scene was taken out of context. It was twisted.
Yeah, they did a premiere. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they did after it made its rounds. That movie, that documentary, went to about 15 different film festivals, including Tribeca and Australia and in Europe. And they pushed it as also nominated it as the documentary of the year for the Oscars. It didn't win, of course, but that's how they pitched it. Now, then they did because it's in Minneapolis, it's based. They did a world, basically a premiere at a theater at the Walker Arts Center here in Minneapolis, and they did a Q&A after the viewing of the show, and Eric Nelson, the director, answered some questions, and some other folks were there as well to answer. And so most of the questions were just normal types of normie questions, but he got hit with a couple of good questions, and he had to backtrack. I was not there, but he did have to backtrack because he was sending conflicting messages on how he was going to do this. Did he want to, answer it and bring closure to the case? No, but he wanted to give all sides of the story and have the viewer leave the theater with their own thoughts and their own perceptions as to what possibly could have happened. And like we've stated earlier, that obviously was not the case, because it was a lot of during the entire movie planting certain seeds at certain spots. So when you left there, you basically was cemented the fact that he did it, and he's a crazy nut job. But like Greg mentioned earlier, most of the traffic on our Justice Facebook page now for new members is people who watch the documentary. That's what's driving the most people. It seems that if you're awake and watching that documentary, it jumps out as something does not make sense. But the normies watch it and they go home and their day is done. They don't think twice about it. But we're getting a lot of traction on our page from people who watch that documentary, specifically like yourself, Christian.
Well, I love it, man, because, and again, there's no such thing as bad publicity where, you guys got railroaded in this thing, yet now you're seeing the spoils of war, where here we are now. Now we're going to put out the real documentary through Dark Docs, and now you have people watching it on Netflix that are semi-woke or woke, and they're like, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to start truth seeking, and they're bound to find your endless stuff on your websites. Again, they're linked, gregfernandezjr.com. Dan, do you have your own website on all this, or just the Facebook?
Mine is www.uglytruth.info, and I have a playlist on YouTube as well, my Dan Hennon channel, and that consists of 44 videos, all on the Crowley case.
That's fantastic, and it's great to be working with you now. You're a regular on Internal Affairs Media. I imagine we're going to be doing a lot of work together, so I'm glad we get along. And, we covered a lot today in these 2 hours. We got about a minute left. Any last notes from you guys?
Nope, I'm good.
Oh,
I think that was pretty solid.
I just wanted to wrap up the show by saying I did hire a private investigator to look into this case back in February, and so he's still pouring through the notes, and we should have results here in the next couple of months.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm going to go ahead and play the tune-out music. Thanks again, and we'll be talking soon, guys.
All right, thanks.
you find value in these broadcasts, please invest in your education and sanity at Eternal Affairs Media and darkdocs.com.
We hope the information you received was beneficial to your quest for truth and justice. Please visit us online at darkdocs.com to download shows, movies, other podcasts, PDF documents, music, and much more for free. No advertisements, no sign-ups, no terms of use, no censorship, no control. This is information warfare. This is the end of the transmission.
Going to our guest here, joining us via video Skype if you're watching on prisonplanet.tv, David Crowley and Danny August Mason, and the website is graystatemovie.com. And I was at Bilderberg, protesting 8, 9, 10 hours a day, bullhorning, shaking hands, and then going back and doing, radio and TV until the wee hours of the morning. So I was pretty exhausted. But the last day before I left, they wanted an interview. And I didn't even know what it was for. I was like, Gray State documentary? Okay, sure. They asked some good questions, and I kind of stumbled off. And then I saw the trailer a month ago or so, and I've been meaning to get them on ever since. And we'll be playing some of the trailer without audio because it doesn't translate well on radio. But for people watching on the internet, we'll be playing some of the video in the background while they speak. But, I mean, it looks like a trailer that would be produced by HBO or something. In fact, it looks like a trailer that would be produced for a $20 million budget movie. Wouldn't say B, but wouldn't say wouldn't say Jerry Bruckheimer. But it looks like HBO quality. I mean, it's right up there. And imagine what they could do with funding. And I'm not associated with the movie. I'm not, I don't have stock in it or anything. I just like to see things produced and made. I helped, start Luke Rudowski off and We Are Change, so many other groups. That's how you defeat people is by creating all these other organizations. That's how you defeat the globalists. That's how you defeat tyrants, is creating so many movements and groups or helping get them rolling to where you can't be stopped. You reach critical mass. And I really hope these guys get this film made. Briefly, people want to know about you individually from graystatemovie.com. So in a minute each, David Crowley first, then Danny Mason. Tell us about yourselves and the impressive film you're working on, and you're also trying to crowdsource fund now. Charlie Manson's records are finally going to get produced with hundreds of thousands of dollars thanks to crowdsourcing. So if that scumbag can get his stuff produced off the crowdsourcing, I hope you can. So let's give it a shot here today. Tell us about yourselves and then about the film.
Hey, Alex, good to talk to you again. I'm David Crowley. I'm the writer and director of Gray State. And I'm a veteran, I'm a husband, I'm a father, and the interesting thing about this material, once you delve into it, is that everyone has to act within their own capacity to express this information. So Gray State has been my effort to kind of draw the human narrative out of all this terrifying information that we see all around us. And I think that's been my responsibility as a filmmaker to kind of craft a human story out of this. And I think what I want to definitely tell your listeners is that every time you look at some of these things happening, like, why isn't anyone showing this in a film? I mean, that is what I'm doing. That is what Gray State is. Gray State is the Alex Jones film, essentially. But as my role as a soldier having to serve in Iraq and Afghanistan, I definitely can see the consequences of these kind of trends playing out and not being corrected. So Gray State definitely shows that.
Well said. Yeah, my name's Danny. Alex, first off, thanks for having us on the show. I'm an actor, co-creator, and help consult the story for Gray State. I've actually been lecturing on the topic about dealing with FEMA, also Federal Reserve, United Nations, for about 5 years now, across the country, and I guess collaborated with David back in 2010 about the information on it, and we both were on the same page about it, and it just kind of spawned from there. And ever since then, it's just been a hell of a ride. So it's definitely, instead of just being just an action film, it's definitely more of a narrative film, character-driven piece. And that's what we're sticking to our guns with on it.
I think that's an important distinction to make, is that it's not a documentary. Where a documentary will pander to a certain crowd who already subscribes to those beliefs, this is a narrative film. It's a literal movie you're going to go to the theater and see. So just imagine the possibilities there. I mean, mainstream media, in effect, has usurped our traditional heritage of storytelling as a means of passing on our culture. As an anti-culture, all we have are movies. So the mainstream media, in that usurpation of that, they've been able to dominate what we see and hear and what we pass on to our children. So imagine if we get a film like Gray State showing in a 1984 sort of format certain consequences of a failure to embrace liberty.
Yeah, I tried to get Rick Linkletter to make a 1984 but future dystopic, and he did make Scanner Darkly, which is excellent. But I wanted one that was contemporary to a military takeover. I mean, I just told him about it and talked about it. But this looks about like the quality of something that he would put out. I mean, it looks really, really good. How did you guys? How much money did this trailer cost? Because I mean, I can see it with the crowds, the actors. They're all doing a really good job. I mean, this looks like HBO quality here. How did you get this done?
Well, when Danny came to us and he's like, hey, guys, check out FEMA camps, check out these things. And we're like, okay. And then it's like, oh, wow, this is important and we should probably pay attention. So, of course, we go about making a film because that's what we do. But my partner, Mitch, and I run a production company called Hothead Productions. And we do photography, videography, and filmmaking, of course. And so basically, Gray State, while you say it looks good, that is essentially cheated, just out of pocket from Mitch and I's production company, and it's doing what we do best, making films in an independent fashion. So we went through the entire production process for every scene for a trailer. I mean, we had to do location permits and casting and arranging all these resources. But yeah, it was funded basically on a budget of about $6,000.
I would like to help you guys, get this done, but also because I've actually been around Hollywood and what goes on there. You've got to be careful, because 99% of the time, some big fish will come along claiming they're going to help you, and all they'll do is pay you a little money, take control of it, and then never produce it. So if I was you, you're going the right way crowdsourcing. I would not take any big money or big investors. They will kill your film. David Crowley, Danny Mason, GrayStateMovie.com. Let's get more into the plot of the film and how much funding you need to get it done properly to then put it in theaters. You've seen what Obama 2016 has done. I mean, it's reached tens of millions of people, and it's made, I don't know, $20 million, whatever it is now. And the cinematography is great and everything, but the budget of that looks like maybe $1 million bucks. The point is that this is where you're actually able to reach people, and a fictional account of near future paralleling reality, I think, is a great way to go. But tell people where they can go to learn more about it and where they can go to crowdsource it. Explain how you're trying to fund this.
All right. All details about the film are available at GrayStateMovie.com, but our crowdfunding is at Indiegogo.com/GrayStateMovie.
And you've got links at GrayStateMovie.com to that.
Yep.
And you've raised $13,000. You're trying to raise $50,000.
Well, one important thing that we should say is that $50,000 is simply just to get us off the ground. This movie cannot be made via crowdsourcing. I mean, if we want to do it right, if we want to lend it the scale that it needs, I mean, Mitch and I can cheat it this way. And we spent $6,000 on the trailer. You say it looks like $1 million. If we get $1 million, it'll look like $6 million, and so on. But crowdfunding is not how we're going to fund it, but it's how we're going to get it seen by the right people.
Well, they've had tens of millions raised with crowdfunding. I saw an idea just a few weeks ago to have these little watches, just little cheap watches with with different faces. They wanted to raise a couple $100,000. They raised like $12 million and had to cut off the money coming into them. So I wouldn't sell yourself short. going on this.
You're right, Alex.
Yeah, hopefully
that would require a massive grassroots campaign similar to what Ron Paul has done.
Yeah.
We need to get out there, and we've had the campaign going for 30 days, and so far we've only gotten 13,000 out of 50,000. And that's
Ron Paul would have kept going if Jesse Benton hadn't started calling his main supporters extremist, as we've seen from Peter Schiff's email telling them not to, I mean, now those of us that know what's going on, we're the bad guys. Ron Paul's still a great guy, but the Republican establishment is literally taking everything over. But I don't want to get off. I don't want to get off into that. Break down the plot of the film for people, or an overview, so they know what we're trying to get out to people.
Well, an important distinction to make is that the trailer is sort of a Hollywood-style trailer showing a lot of action and stuff, and that's not really what the film is about. The film takes place in the context of a future societal breakdown, which does parallel reality trends that we see every day. The story itself will, of course, follow a character who goes through a character arc, and it tells a very human story exploring human truths. That's an important distinction to make. This isn't a snuff film. It's not fear propaganda. It's not fear-mongering. It is a human film. So it follows a narrative.
It's really a love story.
It can be described. It's almost a monster movie. It's a love story. It's all of these things. It's very, very layered. It doesn't chronicle the collapse, but it follows characters and what the decisions they have to make in the event of a societal economic collapse, police state, martial law.
Yeah.
We got a couple tweets out at twitter.com/Real Alex Jones. Go retweet those folks. Systematic takeover of liberty, bringing the New World Order. Gray State movie director and lead actor live now. So I guess that's the tweet. I was telling them to send out a tweet just pointing out, go check out the site and help get the film made. I think that's probably what we need to tweet. But and we've also got folks tuning in there at The Real Alex Jones on Twitter. But I mean, obviously it shows economic collapse, takeover, people being rounded up. All those real preparations are being made. So regardless, I mean, just the trailer you've made helps give people kind of an image of where this is going to go. If we just decide that anything in a uniform's God, well, the corrupt system will take that as a signal to move forward.
Absolutely. And going into the trailer, we realized we had to be extremely visual stimulating on the images. So you see a lot of haunting images of soldiers on the streets, raids into the house, black bagging, haunting images. And that's only the best way we could do it for actually selling the product, for getting the film funded on it.
But we are trying to be true to reality itself. So it's not necessarily a polarized debate saying soldiers are bad or soldiers are good. We have characters embedded in the film that follow very real decision-making problems. I mean, the scenarios include just a National Guard soldier. Am I going to follow my orders? And this goes back on like what the conversations we've had with Stuart Rhodes and the Oath Keepers. Are you going to follow orders and round up people and put the gun to the back of the head of the American people? Or are you going to exercise your own moral capabilities and make the right choice? The soldiers and police in the film go through that realistically. It's not a polarized thing where we're going to say police and military are bad.
And also, we show a couple characters in that who are actually as civilians or regular people, and about their decisions, if they're going to go along with the takeover or if they're going to go against it and actually...
That's actually the scarier part is what the civilians are going to do.
Exactly. And by the way, the takeover is ongoing. If we resist too much politically, they'll stage terror attacks to launch the hot war against us. We'll be right back. We'll talk about the guillotines in the film. David Crowley, writer, producer, editor, VFX artist, composer, very talented folks, and Danny Mason, who is an actor and director, you name it, in theater and film, University of Kansas. Won't go over their whole bio, but GrayStateMovie.com. And I like to have people on like this sometime who have a passion and a dream, because in just the process of trying to make their film, they're putting out mini documentaries, they're putting out trailers, they're already reaching hundreds of thousands and then hopefully millions of people. And we need to help people who are trying to get the word out. We need to help folks that are trying to fight tyranny, because so many people, they either want some big, giant, elaborate master plan that it's going to perfectly, in a chain reaction, like one of those toys where you put the marble in one end and it goes through all the different ladders and loops and elevators, then comes out perfectly, or they don't want to do it. And so much of it is just saying, I'm standing up for the truth. We know what classical tyranny and oppression is. It's happening here. And the people that have hijacked our country, they're admitting that. I mean, they're admitting that we're an occupied nation by foreign banks. They're admitting they're getting rid of the Bill of Rights and Constitution. They're putting RFID and satellite trackers on children nationwide. They know fluoride gives you brain cancer and bone cancer and dumbs you down. I mean, Harvard admits it. These are really evil people. And they don't move against us all because they don't really have the power. They have to convince us to go along with them. So GrayStateMovie.com, and we are going to tweet out right now. It's going up at Infowars.com, the trailer itself, and we will tweet that out to you if you're following us at Real Alex Jones. Aaron Dykes is coming in with some breaking news after our guests leave us, and I've got some other breaking news. We got about 6-7 minutes left with them, and I want to get them back on in the near future, maybe premiere some of their mini documentaries on the nightly news to break down what they're doing. But gentlemen, I mean, give us a sneak peek of kind of the script. You're asking for funding and support here. People are going to want to know. We get the general idea, but you say not a horror movie. Well, tyranny is horror. So I get it's a love story. You know, you love your wife, you love your family, so you better be ready to fight the evil. But, I mean, you got people in white hoods with guillotines as kind of Illuminati executioners and lining people up and shooting them. That's actually the plan in the re-education centers. The Army admits now they do have re-education camps. Since we talked at Bilderberg, that's now been confirmed that they have the re-education camps. So just chilling things happening here. Tell us a little bit about the plot and the man at the guillotine.
Well, that scene does not necessarily happen in the actual feature film. What will happen in the film is the reason we call it Gray State, or one of the reasons, is that it's a division of reality. So we have people who are living in the Alex Jones world who know what's going on, and the people who simply don't. And the description being that it's requiring more and more work to support that illusion. And what will happen when it's finally contested? It's no longer just a luxury to believe in that false world where you just go to your job and everything.
So it's almost like the Matrix. People are so propagandized, they don't know that in the other side of town, they got guillotines chopping people's heads off.
And they won't believe it, Alex. The thing, we know that they will not believe it. And that's kind of the striated response we've gotten on the trailer. It's either A, this is awesome and it's almost true, or B, this is this is not real, and that's why I'm not going to watch the film. And what it does is it shows us how close to reality we're actually getting, because it's that emotional knee-jerk response.
Well, yeah, people think that if they deny it, it suddenly makes it not real.
Exactly.
Yeah, because their reality is a form of religion for them. And the more you encroach on that, it's more you question their morals and ethics and even spiritualism. And it becomes a very, sensitive ground. And the reason why we put the guillotine in it was more of the symbolism behind it, going back to a very dark, medieval time, almost like cultish. So,
and we know that that's something that they would do because it's symbolic, it's brutal, and it's efficient. And actually, something that happens in the actual Gray State thing is that they're going to start sending you something in the mail saying you have to go operate the guillotine. When they round up suspected dissenters and put them in line.
Well, I was about to stop you. You guys have done amazing research. Tell us briefly about your awakenings and what brought you to this point, because I sent out my reporters 2 days ago to do Man on the Street, and they were down at a Starbucks downtown, and they're dressed nice. Linda West and John Bound and others were out there, and all of a sudden they're out in front of Starbucks, and a guy comes out in a three-piece suit. And they say, "Hi, sir, we'd like to interview you, get your take on just the state of things in America, your view on things." And that's all they said to him. And he goes, "Yeah, I got somebody for you." And he goes in, comes up with a camera, starts taking photos of them, and the police pull up and then just, checked him out. But, I mean, a woman in a business suit now with a Infowars.com microphone saying, "Hi, we're getting your take on the state of things, just the state of America." That guy guaranteed was InfraGard, and they've literally recruited almost everyone in an executive position, even what you'd say is low-level, dentists, doctors, or tried to recruit them. Almost every doctor my dad knows, medical or dental, has had a Homeland Security visit. I mean, in America. And they're like, "Well, what do you want me to watch for?" "We want you just to watch what people are saying about the government, what they're doing, what you spy on your patients." My dad's like, "No way." He thought it was just him. It was others. I mean, this is already there. And again, this is the government. It's like, "Well, we're doing it for your safety." They're the ones that got the underwear bomber on the plane. They're the ones that ran Amarillo Lockheed. They're the ones putting the fluoride in their water. It's like, wow, they really are consciously engage in a takeover, and they've got all these weird little minders that feel like secret agents. Because I've seen their training videos, their training manuals I've sent by people on the inside. It's come out about InfraGard. And they even give the higher level InfraGards firearms and tell them they're secretly deputized federally, that they'll be given, this even came out in mainstream news, several big articles a few years ago, I even had the writer on about it, where the headline, guys, if you look it up, was something like InfraGard, being given license to kill. And in the documents they got, it was in major news, it's like 5 years ago, they were being prepared that during an emergency, they would have to kill some of their employees. Like the FBI may order you to start killing people. So, and like the average executive is like on a power trip with a pistol in their drawer and an FBI card, literally shaking with pleasure in this delusion of television that they're like a secret agent now and it's really cool. No, they're going to be throwing you against the public when the globalists are involved in a takeover. I don't think people understand what you just said is what they're already training them for. Go ahead. So I mean, I want you to comment on that briefly, but then also tell me your view of that.
Well, I think the essence is pretty much what they're doing, not go too much on a soapbox, is prepping society to accept oppression as a form of security, and with that, and giving up your liberties and rights on it. And most importantly is giving up this idea of free will and choice and what you actually do with that choice.
And for whatever reason, if you're American, this simply does not apply to you.
Yeah.
As if we're somehow immune to the rhythms of history. And Alex, I want to thank you because we owe a lot of the this information coming out because of you and your organization.
Yes.
A lot of people like to say that, well, you guys are just Alex Jones acolytes, and that makes you bad, and that makes me not want to listen to you. Well, we have nothing to gain from you being right about this, Alex. If you're right, we're not going to make the film.
Yeah, we're screwed.
Yeah, but if you're wrong, I mean, why? If we're wrong, we can go on and make films and have a successful
career. Yeah, but listen, the cowards always attack those that are telling it like it is. I mean, it's official they're training the military for gun confiscation. It's official that they have the FEMA camps now. And do we get told, hey, great job, you were right. Here's the Army document, re-education camps. When good people in the Army leak it, and the Army admits it's real. No, we're even more wrong when we're right. You understand that?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's been the response on YouTube. 97% positive, 3%. You guys are crazy. Get out the tinfoil hats. I'm not going to watch your film.
But you notice they'll still 3% dominate the comments because they're paid. And a lot of those are admitted sock puppets. Those aren't even people.
That could very well be true. But the scary thing about Gray State is that you're going to have those people who speak out, but they represent a silent majority. The 97% who don't win revolutions, those are the scary ones, because the second you challenge their entitlements, like in a scenario the Gray State suggests, they're going to revolt. So if revolutions are won by the 3%, they're going to be turned on by the 97%, and that is the real Gray State. There is the people who are so mind controlled, they don't listen to facts on a reasonable basis, and they deny whatever you say just because.
And it's crazy because I've been researching this material since even when I was really, really young. And I think just from that, always having the questions about situations with government and also with foreign affairs and foreign policies at the same time, to never accept the truth as it is, but always to go on your own. Well, in terms of research, and wherever the truth is going to lie in the individual. And it's just our jobs as artists and our responsibility to present the truth. And whatever that truth is dependent on the interpretation of the individual.
And that's not something you've seen from art lately. Like in the 60s, what they did is art represented reality, and they represented the zeitgeist of that time. We haven't seen that.
It was a fantastic movement, and it just got shunned. And that's what we're attempting to do.
That recently. At Gray State, I'm not saying it's unique. I'm not saying it's perfect, going back to what you said before. But it's one exercise in retaking our mainstream
resistance
media.
Is victory. I mean, if we just resist, it's like a muscle building. We're going to get stronger and better as we go. And so stop waiting. I mean, that's why I love what you're doing. You're just going at it, and you're also going at something big, but have already created amazing, thought-provoking information in the process. So it is, the old saying of it's not the destination, it's the journey. That's the trip. And I hope people right now go to your website and donate to it $5, $10, $20, because if you won't exercise your First Amendment today, you'll never exercise the second. And the first is more powerful if you use it up front than the second. It's a cop-out to just get a bunch of guns and sit around on them all day and say, I'm going to kill somebody if they come and try to put me in jail. Why don't you instead try to wake up the minions of the system before you have to think about the point of, oh, my God, they're going to take me to a FEMA camp. Okay, it's time to get the guns out because you're not going to let them take you to a re-education camp. And we're getting to that point. And then
talks about, Alex, is the second the guns come out, 80% casualties, 80% fatalities. We do not want it to come to that point by any means. And by
the way, you talked about Iraq. Well, I mean, in a moment, just briefly talking about Iraq and Afghanistan, where you were. I mean, they admit all that's a laboratory for here. I've read MIT magazine saying what we did in Fallujah with the cameras, the trackers, the face scanners, we're going to do that here. And now police are out on the highway at checkpoints with face scanners. I mean, it's here. This is here. Go ahead.
Oh, also,
we know that's true.
Yeah, with drones and with everything.
I mean, they're trying to impose martial law, the same model that they do overseas. And yeah, we know that, Alex. We know that. What's next? What's next? That's why we're making a film to show the people who otherwise would not be recipients of this message.
I mean, we were just on a brief note. We were shooting this way before any Occupy Wall Street came out. Anything from like the NDAA ever came out. And when these events started taking place and people started looking at the images and finally saw the trailer, they just started looking at us like, what's next? We don't know. We were just thinking ahead of what would be the worst case scenario and like the scariest thing to come across visually. So
just because we have that luxury as filmmakers to show something, but also not have to prove it. We can explore these possible.
I mean, here's the deal: the system is openly preparing for war against us, and
the film is true. The film is essentially it could be described as a documentary.
Now, I interrupted you a moment ago, so we're almost out of time. What was the point you were trying to make?
Oh, I was just going to say that going back to the nature of resistance, resistance is victory. That is a statement that the Gray State does a very good job of describing. Even though you may be killed resisting, the act of resistance on a metaphysical level has value. So we can reassign. I mean, it's not about Ron Paul. We know that now. Yeah. It's not about retaking the country and persisting in this paradigm. It's about finding out who you are as a person, as a human being, and resisting coercion.
In this realm and also in the other realms too. And I'll just only hint at that.
It's a very layered script. It is. It's metaphysical.
Well, no, the fight is at its core spiritual, and you'd have to be in deep denial and delusion spiritually now to not know that the shadows are getting long here. Gentlemen, amazing. Again, the website, both the websites for people to go find out what's going on. We're also just posted the full trailer at Infowars.com for people to pass around, but give people the websites one more time.
GrayStateMovie.com and Facebook.com/GrayStateMovie, Indiegogo.com/GrayStateMovie. This is a film you're going to want to see because it's everything that Alex says put on screen.
Yes.
It's going to be so brutal because we don't pull any punches. This is not our game to pander to the lowest common denominator. We're going to make it as brutal as we possibly can because that is the reality we're facing.
And it's up to the people to help us out.
Right, because no studio is going to touch this.
No, not at all.
So we need you guys' support.
And we want David, independent and grassroots.
Sure. David Crowley, Danny Mason, we'll talk to you both again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us on, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.
Very exciting. A lot of neat stuff over on their website as well. Aaron, we're going to go to break and come back.
We are working vigilantly on it at the same time, working on securing funding, finalizing the script for it. Also on top of that, a documentary. So that should be coming out first and be able to do the big push. So,
well, yeah, if you're not familiar with Gray State, it's basically a film about a future collapse of society under martial law, the loss of liberty and violation of the Constitution. So it's right there hand in glove with what's going on right now, real world, with the legislation being passed and not being passed. We had a recent victory, which is encouraging, but it's always an ongoing fight, and that's why we're teaming up with Stuart Rhodes. And there's too much compelling stuff right now to not make a documentary about it. So we're trying to use the current hype, and not just make a narrative feature film that's just, it's playtime, it's fake. It's a film is a lie that tells the truth, basically. So we're making a feature film that's not true. I mean, it's not based on current events, but you find its roots in current events. So we're trying to make it into sort of an engine of prosperity that will generate revenue with some documentaries. It'll consistently produce documentaries. There will be a web series, an entertainment-based web series, and then multiple feature films. So getting all this stuff off the ground is what is taking us so long to do it. But we're working very hard every day to do it. I mean, it's our full-time jobs, and we're not slacking here. But we got to do things the right way. I mean, we can't just poop out a script in a weekend. It's taken me 2 years so far to write this thing. Well, over a year of writing, of solid writing, just to get the script perfect. If it's not perfect, an investor will be like, "I like your style, but the script is going to fall flat." So we have to avoid those pitfalls by making sure all the gates are met along the way. So
but
that's
also, most importantly, we want to keep it independent. So we have control over the creative integrity of it, and not some Hollywood production company that tells us what they do.
Red Dawn. We can't piss off the Chinese anymore, so they got to make them North Korean. And then everyone's just rolling their eyes, but they'll still go see the movie. Hopefully, we will surpass those kind of limitations and be as true to form as possible while remaining entertaining.
So tell us, may go each one by one, is what really got you involved in starting the film? How'd you guys get started? What was your turning point for making this, or start making this film to, spread the message of, to everybody out there?
Oh man, that's a long story.
How did you wake up?
Yeah. I mean, pretty much. It's been a long time for me. I've been researching information, just dealing from a lot of conspiracy, what they call conspiracies. I call them not theories, facts, personally. Probably almost about 10 years now. I met with David probably about 4 years.
2010.
Yeah, 2010, so about 3 years ago. We were very much on the similar page, coming from different backgrounds. Him being military, me just being book nerd on it. Similar ideas, morals, ethics towards it. Presented some information on it. Told him not to believe me, research it himself. He came back, not just coming back with incredible ideas for this idea that kind of merged into Gray State, how it is now. So
it's been a perpetual waking up. I mean, everyone's got that moment where they get dizzy and it's like, oh shit, my world's coming to an end tomorrow. But then you overcome that, and everyone has to act within their own capacity to kind of spread the message, to be the Sermon on the Mount or whatever, be a disciple for what you now know, because you're now in a sea of zombies. You start to see it, and we're filmmakers, so we're going to make a film about it. We're going to tell a story, because that's where my brain goes. I see this stuff going down. I'm like, this place will become a third world country, a battleground, and I want to do what I can to avoid that. So maybe I can show what that might look like through a film to kind of wake people up, like, this is something worth protecting. So
also at the same time, and we were just in Boston just for a day, and just seeing how that was going down within literally a military state, which is very inspiring because of what we do inside our head. Actually seeing progress in real life, not only is it scary, but also at the same time, also in a weird, morbid way, inspirational for us, because we know what we're doing is going to be shaking, but also entertaining to the fact that we can also reach millions of people, not just a limited amount of people at the same time.
If we play our cards just right, it'll pass as science fiction just enough. I mean, you see like Mad Max, okay, or something like that. That's off in the future. That's some desert, weird, strange world that I can disassociate from my current reality enough to be comfortable with the film. Hopefully it'll be just enough over that border so people can comfortably watch it and absorb its message without being turned off by it trying to tout itself as truth. So we're going to play it a little bit safe, but although the film is fake, nothing in it is fake. Nothing in it is not real. So I mean, that's where it's pretty unique as a film.
So going to different events and talking to people about it, what's the response been so far from many people you've talked to, different locations? Anything stand out to you guys?
It's striation.
I mean, it totally is.
It's the divide that we expected. It's, either they love it or they hate it. But it's about a 90-10 split where people are like, you're onto something there. That's pretty important. And then other people are just violently opposed.
And just from an entertainment standpoint, people are on that page. We're like, we could see it. From what you guys are trying to do, for the time when we actually shot the trailer, our tools were limited to what we were able to actually envision it. But other people were just completely disgusted and call us just basically psychos about it. Like, we're crazy. But they cannot deny the fact that there is beginning a movement behind the Gray State, because this is what people want to see on the same time. And they can't deny that because of the truth.
So most importantly, to wrap it up here quick, tell us, anybody, viewers out there, where they could find the work, to keep updated on it, what's going on now, any updates where people could find that, to donate, anything else like that.
You can find us on YouTube at the Gray State channel, graystatemovie.com. You're going to find us on Facebook, which is Facebook.
Google Gray State Movie. You're going to get 60 pages of hits. It's awesome, like seeing how many people find the trailer and push it. So Google it, you'll find it. But something that we just started is the documentary we're calling Gray State: The Rise. So if you're interested in finding out like real world updates, sharing news, the current stuff that the film can't touch, but it's still real world, that's where the documentary is going to come through and actually post the current events. So Gray State: The Rise will be our documentary, but Gray State Movie will cover everything else.
I've just been interested in liberty and economics for a long, long time, and and basically when the 2008 crash happened, we said, let's make this into a real interesting story, and turn this into something that nobody's ever seen before, and very quickly the roots of all this goes down to the Federal Reserve, goes down to the nature of money itself.
Yeah, I just came out to support the movie. I really appreciate what the producers are trying to do, the message that they're sending. They're trying to entertain as well as educate. And so I think it's an important film in that respect. I wish we'd get more films like this, maybe even, some major Hollywood studios doing some bigger films.
Here with David Crowley of the Gray State, great movie coming out. And why don't you tell us a little bit about that, what you're doing, what Gray State is, and why people should look out for it.
All right. Well, when you look outside your window and it's suddenly not the same world you remember, it's called waking up, and then everyone in their own capacity has to act. And so just like everyone here is protesting, trying to get the word out, to raise awareness for things, I'm a filmmaker. I have to act in my own capacity as well. So I'm exercising my creative liberties while I still have them to create a film that is essentially based on this reality. So Gray State, while it is a narrative fake feature film, it's based in reality, just like a monster movie might be about a shark. Our shark is what the Bilderbergs want to accomplish with our world. So Gray State is martial law, civil war, economic collapse, calamity in the streets, death by starvation. Who knows what the options are? We know what the possibilities could be. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's our best interpretation. So the Gray State is a film about what we can expect. It's a consequence of what could happen if we collectively fail to embrace liberty, essentially.
Nice. And when can people expect to see this released?
No one knows. This is comprehensive, but no one knows exactly what to expect from the reality these guys in the Bilderberg meeting are trying to accomplish for the world they want. No one can really expect what's going to happen. Is it going to be a false flag attack? Is it going to be a mega virus or an EMP from Russian? No one really knows what's going to happen. It's our best interpretation. So in absorbing all this information, we have to craft our own story, and that has been a process. So it's been about 2 years that we've been developing the concept and creating a marketing package. Basically, we shot a concept trailer last year, and we've been working on it this entire time. So it's been ongoing, and we're trying to do it right, because if we're going to do it right, we're going to do it the way we want to do it and not sell it to a corporate studio who's going to mess it up and try to put in their own messages. So in doing it right, yes, we are taking a while, and it's just me and my partners doing all the work, but hopefully that will explode, and it will be taken out of our hands more professionals who we can then just direct creatively and accomplish the task for us. In accordance with the project, the entire project's directed. But the trailer should be done in August, and so we'll be making our public debut at that time, and really going public with our concept videos we've been creating by people like gathering material at events like this, talking to the real guys, because this film is about real issues. So we've got concept material, we've got behind-the-scenes material, graphic arts, and of course the trailer. There might be 2 trailers, there might be 3 trailers, but it's going to be an ongoing effort while we acquire the funding that we need.
Nice, and it looks really great. I saw the trailer, and yeah, there's a video on Sean Wright's video. There's a trailer. I saw something.
What did you post?
I didn't post nothing.
Well, not the trailer. Okay, I saw the footage from your interview.
Everyone tells us that they've seen the trailer. The trailer is not out yet. Okay. It's got visual effects incorporating 3D stuff. We're trying to achieve a Hollywood standard, so it does take a long time. So the trailer is not done yet. I do have a rough draft, but no one has seen it.
I've seen it. No, I'm just kidding. Not me.
You're telling a combat veteran that I shared something I'm not supposed to. No,
you seriously.
Operational security, Sean. Come on.
Wait, well, we're looking forward to seeing the Gray State, and where can people find that on the internet?
GrayStateMovie.com. We're on Facebook. It's at Facebook.com/GrayStateMovie. We also are on YouTube, and YouTube is the place to go if you want to see the videos that we've been releasing. We just released a Ron Paul promotional video to support our crowdfunding campaign, because we're trying to get some money to go to the RNC, because we're trying to get to these real events where the real stuff is going down, so we can continue to document reality, and then of course that's going to filter right back into the narrative feature film.
Nice.
So yeah, GrayStateMovie.com though, check it out.
Cool. Well, it's good speaking with you, brother.
Hey, thanks.
Is David Crowley. This guy is working on an amazing project. I got to spend some time with him at some of the events recently. This is a great team working on Gray State, the movie about the encroaching police state. So I want him to come up and tell you about it. David Crowley, everyone.
It's always refreshing to encounter people who are alert and thinking. Most places you go, it seems like the people you encounter are the glassy-eyed acolytes of Facebook, TV, or pop culture. You know, the ones who, when you look at them, you're not even sure if they can see you. Or there's the ones who, when you look at them, there's a light, an intelligence, and an alertness behind the eyes that's almost, well, human. And more often than not, that intelligence will be linked to a person who is familiar with freedom. To me, the light of humanity is not in its technical capability to enslave each other and itself, but in the calm understanding that if I am to be truly free, then I must observe your right to be free as well. And here at Fall Fest, I see that familiar recognition of a fellow freedom lover in everyone I meet. And in the words of Dr. Paul, that idea of liberty is becoming more and more popular. So, let me introduce myself. My name is David Crowley. I'm a husband and a father. And I'm a combat infantry veteran with over 5 years of service and 2 deployments. But I'm here speaking today as a filmmaker. I'm the writer and director of the film Gray State. Now, has anyone heard of Gray State? You know, that doesn't surprise me because the trailer racked up nearly 150,000 views in its first week on YouTube. The overwhelmingly positive response to the trailer tells me that for whatever reason, it's something people want to see. Since we began developing the concept 2 years ago, people have been asking me, what is the Gray State? This is a question whose answer needs no further clarification than for you to look outside your window and observe what your world has become. You may recognize it as the world financial prison that has been created by bankers. You may recognize it as a visualization of the uneasy fear you may now have as a police car pulls up behind you. You may recognize it as one quick step away from the pervasive surveillance state in which we now live. In any one of these estimations, you would be correct. In short, the Gray State is the culminating manifestation of the darkest trends our negligence and malignancy have to offer. As you watch the trailer, you see that every scene exemplifies something sick about the way our culture has devolved. Every scene is a revealing stab at the innocuous beginnings of a totalitarian police state, suggesting just how our silence and inaction might be rewarded. It is a preview of what happens should the Ron Paul revolution, that fire of free thought, roll over and die, and let them have their way with our country. Gray State may be just a movie, but if that's all it really is, then Ron Paul is just another congressman. If you've already seen the Gray State trailer, you'll recognize this tagline. The Second American Revolution may not be remembered. It surprised me how little people question that statement, and not in the way that they usually don't question what they see and hear. It seems like they really get it. They understand that if the frontal attacks on liberty we endure on a day-by-day basis ever culminate into a shooting war, then it will result in either a total teardown of our current system of government or a complete eradication of the fundamental idea of freedom. And looking around, you know that such a possibility is not far off. The film explores trends like RFID, bio, and nanotechnology. These represent the fusion of authoritarian control and human flesh, and these trends are no longer science fiction. Trends like the slow, systematic takeover of the free exchange of information as foretold by Orwell, also, unfortunately, no longer science fiction. Trends like the slow yielding of our quiet American towns and streets to a choking array of federal surveillance grids, illegal police checkpoints, and literal foreign occupation. Trends like the acceptance of torture as a sanctioned practice, the acceptance that a portion of our children will be siphoned off to be sacrificed in foreign wars, and that the acceptance that this is simply the way things are. The acceptance that some people may be arrested, black-bagged, and imprisoned without charges or trial, and that as long as we submit to state authority, continue to yield our liberties, and modify our behavior to fit the mold of federal approval, this unlucky person being dragged away will not be us. And as long as at least we believe our freedoms are not at stake, we will be allowed to return to the comfortable complacency of our padded, regimented lives. We live in strange times. We share this nation with people who think drinking raw milk is radical behavior. People who think organizing a military stand-down is radical behavior.
People who think committing our troops and our resources to more and more undeclared foreign wars with increasingly thin veneers of moral justification is actually patriotism. People who are unfamiliar with interpersonal communication, completely without trust, sense of community, or allegiances beyond corporate brand loyalty. We live in a society that is fractured, marginalized, and distracted. The film will explore the consequences of this complacency, but also the film will explore the rise of those who did not live their lives asleep, the rise of patriots, those who know that liberty is not given but purchased, and at some point collectively decide that enough is enough. Patriots loyal to the founding principles of this country by which the most successful experiment of liberty in human history has drawn its voice, backed by the awesome heritage of armed resistance to tyranny each American can proudly claim, throw off their shackles, and retake their birthright. We are not a nation of sheep who should look at our history with shame and submit to authoritarian rule. The Gray State will tell this story as well. There are many people in this country, and in this room perhaps, who anxiously await an armed revolution. They imagine that if only we could return to constitutional republic and embrace free markets and individual liberties again, that the American dream will return to us. But will the Second American Revolution be remembered? Because now we begin to appreciate the magnitude of our opposition. This is not an obsolete single tyrant thousands of miles away who threatens everyone's freedom publicly, but a convoluted mess of legislation and social evolution that slowly and gradually usurps our liberties one at a time, whose enforcers believe that they are working in the best interest of all, and whose ranks are filled by our own friends and neighbors. They say revolutions are won by the 3%, and that may be true. Many potential 3%ers are here in this room today. But the Gray State, the real Gray State, is the 97% who will not have their entitlements threatened by a minority. And it's the first sign that these government subsidies will end, will finally act to betray us. And with the array of technological and logistical weapons arrayed against us, should that armed revolution begin, should that shot heard around the world be fired in our time, we are locked into a conflict that will end with either our total, complete throwdown of the system, after perhaps 50 years of guerrilla warfare and uncounted casualties, or our utter annihilation. Since we can no longer tolerate an uneasy coexistence or truce with tyranny, neither are good options. And friends, in the event that the revolution should fail, history will not remember us. Because the Gray State will have won, and the masses will go back to the comfortable ignorance the state so loves in its own citizens, and no record will be left to inspire future dissent. Do not let it get to that point. Before we go so far as to commit our families to alienation, persecution, and guerrilla warfare, we must exhaust every possible avenue of peaceful reclamation of our country. Having been to Iraq and Afghanistan, I've seen our military's capacity for so-called peacekeeping. And this is not something we want here at home. This means that regardless of who is elected this November, our values must persist and the fight must go on without violence. Ladies and gentlemen, you know all this already. You have envisioned the look of our homes and our streets in a post-revolution world. That is why you're here, putting your own liberty at stake to take a stand for your rights while you still can. And we all know that we have one foot in the Gray State already, since to say that your liberties are at stake is no longer hyperbole. But while you have envisioned this consequence, perhaps, where has been the artistic response to the social attitudes and fears of today? Why has there been no artistic revolt to the atrocities of our times? The artist's responsibility is to best exemplify the zeitgeist, to be the barometer of our social experience, and provide insight and expression to the world climate in which we live, far removed from the censorship and control of government regulation. We need these outlets to show us our values in new light, and if necessary, show us possible consequences of the loss of those values. But I think we can agree that on the national level, the artistic response has been silence, or worse, compliance. And so it's little wonder that while our liberties count down their final hours, all that most Americans are concerned about is who is winning on Dancing with the Stars. There has been very little voice for the cause of liberty, which traditionally has been given volume by the arts. My friends, in this regard, the Gray State Project will not betray you. This is not a documentary that speaks only to the few, but a narrative story that speaks about the universal truths of humanity's better natures and through trial by fire puts it to the test. It is as exciting as anything you'd go to see in the theaters and as compelling and disturbing as the latest executive order. And while I make no claim that my efforts as an artist best exemplify the thoughts and feelings of every person in this room, I do assert that as far as expressions of freedom go, this is one we can all get behind. And while many are probably wondering what a film pitch has to do with the Ron Paul movement, the realists in the audience here today understand the need to explore a post-Ron Paul America. Because even if our greatest hopes are realized and Dr. Paul becomes President Paul, under the current paradigm, the complacency of future generations will allow the cyclical return of tyranny as we have done. That is why we must embrace the enduring expressions of liberty that the artistic community can provide. As a libertarian filmmaker speaking to my audience, I can pretty well guarantee you that if you support us and help get our films into mainstream theaters, we can together divert the social and political conscience away from the destructive, apathetic sleep state we are in. The Gray State can be our Trojan horse into mainstream media, injecting real issues in the same way Dr. Paul has done. But it's an uphill battle. Just as Ron Paul requires grassroots support outside of the establishment, no Hollywood studio will touch the Gray State Project due to its contentious nature. That is why we need your help to get this film financed and seen in theaters, so it can make the impact it is capable of as a legitimate message of liberty. If Gray State resonates with you as truth, as a vision of a future scenario we must avoid at all costs, I hope you'll consider supporting the project through financial contribution, or at least spreading the message and getting the trailer seen by as many people as possible. So please visit our website at graystatemovie.com to find out how you can help us in our efforts. As you very well know, the fight for liberty is no longer a spectator sport. So it is paramount that we engage all of our resources for every frontline cause. If we don't, our children, for whom we hope to leave a better world, will find themselves fighting our battles in a scenario not too far off from what the Gray State shows. As an artist and storyteller who is awake to the world, I will do everything in my capacity to meet my responsibility. The question is, will you? So again, I know that I'm speaking to people who are awake, and I know that I can count on your support. Gray State has already been described as a prophetic look into a terrifying future, but I appeal to you here today to help us prove them wrong. And through our united effort, we keep this film in the fiction section. Thank you.
If you haven't already seen the trailers for this film, check it out on YouTube. Really amazing. The production quality is really high. It's unlike anything you've ever seen coming out of the Liberty Movement thus far.
My name is David Crowley. I'm a filmmaker from Minnesota, and I've been working on the project Gray State. And so far, it's just a concept trailer, meaning that it's not an actual feature film yet. It's an idea that we show, to help a possible investor or a studio or whomever visualize what our idea is all about. So basically, it's been an exercise in developing the themes and really getting the visuals across and showing A, that we can that it's a good idea and that's something that people want to see, and B, that we can actually pull it off. So it's both a resume and sort of a pitch to anyone who's looking. And this is now a marketing tool that we can take to a studio or a possible investor or just put online so people can see it. And that's been one of our main goals, is to get 1 million views. That's investor bait, and so far so good. It's up to like 170,000 right now. It's been a little over 2 weeks since it's gone up. We've just released our press kit, so we're about to start emailing and actually actively pushing the trailer instead of just letting it go viral. So far it's just been Facebook shares. So what you're telling me by sharing it on Facebook is that it's something you want to see, and that's telling me that, yeah, this could be a good movie, and it's commercially viable, and with the right financial backing, we can actually make it happen. How people wake up to liberty, and that is the term we all use, right? Wake up, because these things go on all around us all the time, and most people know about everything. Any one of these issues, you ask anyone, they've heard about it to some degree, but it requires sort of an awakening context by which they can establish the difference between that reality and the one that they live in. So for me, I was in the military from 2004 to 2009. I was stop-lost for 15 months. I was deployed illegally as a civilian for a while. So I know what it's like to be a number on a page, and I've seen what our military is capable of when it thinks it's peacekeeping. I've seen the division between the military being used as a blunt instrument of foreign policy, as it should, and being a domestic police force, which it shouldn't. And so I have seen the context. I've seen the contrasts between one reality and the other. And basically, it was my military experience that helped me to decide and value liberty. I mean, liberty is a real thing, and it's being threatened, and it's not defined by our creature comforts. There's some other thing that goes on, and it's about freedom, really. And are we free? And once you have that context by which to describe what I call the gray state, that's what the gray state is, then you can begin to wake up to your reality and say, hey, this stuff isn't right.
Yeah, gotcha. Was there just something, you said a little bit before that you've been writing this for kind of 2 years or whatnot. What triggered just the gray state? I mean, I know liberty and all that, but just the whole martial law, gray state, was there something that just...
It's all research based. Once you start to open your eyes, read a couple books, Google something, Google any one of these terms that you see in gray state, FEMA, martial law, RFID chip, the future rise of the Patriots. This stuff is all in there, and it's all widely available. And once you start to decide that this is not just conspiracy and that I should probably pay attention, bam, you're in the world, and there's no end to it. And it's that research that said, someone needs to tell this story, So there has to be a narrative in this, and I'm sure people have tried. And that's why it's taken me 2 years to sort of condense everything into one storyline, because there's 100 different ways by which the federal government will end this country. And I had to pick, what I thought was the most realistic scenario, and that's kind of what the gray state is.
Whenever you were writing it, was there anything that you thought, maybe I should hold back on it? Or?
That's a very good question. Anyone who opens their eyes to this material has that month or so when they're just afraid, and they go outside and they're like, it's going to happen tomorrow. Look at all these fools. They don't know what's coming. And it's like, you're just afraid of everything. I got over that like everyone else does. And I realized, well, there's some time at least. And so I was able to, bury myself in the film effort and really try to craft that narrative out of the mess that I was researching. Now, do things really scare me about the gray state? Well, hell yes, they do. Now, the follow-on question to that typically is, well, why are you making a movie? That's your response to knowing the truth about this awful, dark, crazy world we live in? Well, I think that everyone needs to act within their own capacity. I'm an artist, I'm a storyteller, I'm a filmmaker, so I have to do something, and if telling this story helps people to wake up, and that's what people have largely told me, then that's what I'm going to do. Now, as far as what scares me about it, well, with what is coming, you and I are aware of this, with what is coming down the pipe, yeah, we are all going to face some very terrifying shit in the next maybe even couple months. Who knows? I'm not a fortune teller, I can't tell you that, but something is coming. And at the very least, we all have to meet our own demise someday anyway. That's something to be scared of, or maybe not. Maybe we can just achieve a sort of spiritual maturity in which we can face our own deaths, because in the end, that's the worst they can do to us. The thing that scares me about gray state is that may not be the worst thing they can do to you, is kill you. So that's where gray state has taken me down that dark road. Death is not the worst thing. The end of the revolution, it's not the worst thing. I mean, there are deeper things to you than your body. The gray state is not by any means like a Christian film, but it is spiritual. Yeah. So defining the resistance and defining conflicts and defining how you will defend your liberty and your freedom and what that means. What am I as an intelligent, sentient being in the world? That's what kind of scares me, because they can take more than your life. I think everyone's got a vision about how they can best tell their own stories. And I think with today's technology, that's utterly possible. I mean, that's entirely possible. Anyone can basically pick up a camera and make their first film, get noticed for the quality of the storytelling, and move on from there, getting funding and getting attention from here and there. It's a ladder, for sure, because you're not starting out in Hollywood with $1 million. It doesn't work that way. So libertarian filmmakers, you'll find yourself at odds with society. My trailer has done awesome on the national scale. Locally, everyone is used to it. Everyone's used to me. They're tired of my politics. I don't know what it is, but it's been largely ignored. That's because, to the large extent, we know that the mainstream media has a liberal bias. They're not willing to even acknowledge these ideas. So it will be a challenge for young libertarian filmmakers trying to make their mark in film. but it's not like a dead end by any means. There's always hope because, as Dr. Ron Paul says, freedom is popular. And so there's a large audience of untapped resources, of an untapped audience who are willing to watch your projects. If this film can actually get made, yeah, that's a strike. I mean, that's a victory for the liberty movement, because you know that I'm going to put in some liberty-minded ideals into the film. Now, it's a concept trailer, so we need money. Basically, it comes down to begging for pennies, but that's the way it's got to be, because no Hollywood studio is going to back this film. So it's got to come from grassroots, spreading the word. Hey, check out this trailer. Share it on Facebook. Have them share it on Facebook. Share it in public forums. Talk about it. Check out our website, because we're running a crowdfunding campaign. If 100 people see the trailer, one of those people might donate $5. So it's Indiegogo.com/Gray State Movie. That's where we're running the campaign. We're offering some T-shirts. We're offering posters, signed 8x10, signed posters, a lot of stuff from the film itself. A lot of really cool things that we're offering in exchange for some of your contributions. And that's how we're going to start funding this film. And then eventually it will go off and we'll get some major investing, maybe get backed by a studio or two, I don't know. That might happen. We might get the couple $1 million that we need to actually produce the film, and it might actually happen within the next 2 years. So definitely support the project any way you can, either through financial contributions or just sharing the trailer. That's really all we need right now, is just share that trailer, get it seen.
Cut crew.
We cut crew from the budget.
You had a budget?
See, now you're hitting on my main point.
The really cool thing about Gray State is that what we're doing it from the standpoint of the marketing and taking our time and gathering our resources and getting ready to push it at the right moment is something that most films around the Twin Cities aren't doing.
Out in Hollywood or out in New York or Chicago, whatever, they do these things. Around here, nobody does that. I'm really impressed with the marketing aspect of Gray State. The photos look amazingly professional. The website looks incredible. All of these things lend a professionalism and a high production value to something that isn't even made yet, that attracts attention. It demands attention. The more that Dave and Mitch apply their knowledge to the marketing aspects, it makes it comparable to huge budget features, and it draws the eye.
The trailer is almost secondary to the concept push itself. We are generating something like 25 behind-the-scenes videos. They're pushing this concept, showing that, yeah, we planned for this, and we did this, and this is what we get. And this is with no budget. And we've already passed a lot of local films on Facebook in popularity, and we're in hibernation. If we approach an investor with a completed trailer and we have 10,000 Facebook fans, a movement behind it, that's already a sale.
Filmmakers have not been able to utilize the resources that they can through Facebook and the marketing aspect on it, and figure out, first off, who's your demographic? Who's your niche? How are you going to contact the people who actually have deep pockets? What's your plan of taking the film to the next level? How are you going to be able to distribute it? How are you going to get in contact with those people?
It's a big marketing package, and we hand these, like, go to a potential investor or something like that. We give them these things like, this is what we have done, this is what we are prepared to do, how dedicated we are to this project, and with your help, we can make this project.
Conversations I've had with other actors and other directors, we've talked about the detail and how much time and effort is going into just a trailer.
Most concept trailers never see the light of day or never really get off the ground, let alone you're putting a lot of funding and money into a product that you're hoping to lead to the actual production of the film itself.
A lot of work has gone into the concept trailer because they're looking to sort of show this as a very wide concept, a very big, broad-based concept that envelops an entire country. So it's going to take a lot of work. These things definitely take time.
It's all about the quality. It's not about the quantity. And this is where people get really confused, because a lot of filmmakers are like, well, I'm going to pump out films like this, shorts, boom, boom. And when they do that, it's like this.
I think so much work has gone into a concept trailer because they believe in what they're writing about.
I know with David and Mitch as filmmakers, they wanted to do a lot of things and they wanted to push the barrier and the envelope as much as possible.
There's a ton of detail, a lot of footage, a lot of options to do a lot of different things. And in addition to just one standard trailer, there's huge opportunity to do ongoing promotion.
If you guys put this much effort into it, then you care about what the story's going to be. And to me, that's the most important thing.
The mistake I think a lot of film producers and directors make is that they send it out and send it out and they will watch it. And maybe they will, but the way Facebook and the internet works, things are there and gone in a millisecond. So you really have to put together a campaign to get that information out there.
All this buzz that people have for Gray State, we didn't start it. We just started shooting. We started doing a scene here, a scene there, involving people that we wanted, and it just generated from there.
It was crazy. We didn't do anything to hype the film at all. All the hype has come from people being on set.
The people who have worked on Gray State already are like evangelists. I kid you not.
The more people that were brought on to Gray State, the more they started talking about it and publicizing it, and it just became this huge buzz. Like, tell me more about Gray State. Hey, how can I get on that set?
People working on feature films being shot during the same time. The cast and crew on that feature film was talking about Gray State.
I think everybody's in anticipation.
But we knew we had to use that hype for our own good and push that because we knew it being successful was going to be built on word of mouth and grassroots.
The things that we're showing, the things that we're saying are appealing to people, and it's making it a very popular idea.
I think people are finally seeing a film that it's a direct reflection of what reality is actually becoming. And I think people are, at this point, are extremely happy and excited for a project like this to show that.
I think there's a huge amount of potential for the Gray State idea. The incredible professionalism of the shoot, the really awesome look of the trailer. I think it's going to get some attention, and I think it's going to get some budgetary attention, some financial attention, which it really deserves.
I think Gray State would definitely run into some problems because they're pushing the envelope. With anything that's pushing the envelope or trying to get a message out there that maybe not everybody agrees with, you're going to have some things you're running with.
I think it's going to go over well with whomever you show it to.
I think it'll go over well with them. Whether they want to actually give us money to do it, who knows?
The way that it's being done, I mean, the interviews, doing a trailer and not just shooting the feature, we can get investors interested in the project so that we can get funding, so that we can actually make something that's great.
We're saying, well, anyone can make a movie these days because for $3,000 you get pro quality gear. Well, yeah, it's all what you do with it. A tube of paint is cheap, but not everyone's Picasso. So.
Because in this day and age, not only are we talking about creating an effective story, but this story can only be produced if it's got the financial backing to create it.
I'd like to see him get it made and have it actually go somewhere and be noticed as being something that got made in Minnesota. And wow, they pulled something off with nothing.
Is immensely ambitious and requires a great deal of financial backing, let's be honest. So they understand that a good concept marketing piece like a trailer with posters and websites, distribution ideas, really the effectiveness of how they can create the story, knowing all that ahead of time so that they can offer this to investors so that they know that what they're investing in knows what they're doing and will immediately not have any question about any aspect of the production. David and Mitch and Danny have already answered those questions for any investor that has them.
Hopefully we get some fantastic funding so we can make a bomb movie.
And we can. There's no doubt in my mind. There's enough resources here and talent to actually do it.
My idea on doing films in the Twin Cities is pretty much this is our home and we can do everything that they can do on the West Coast. And now all we have to do is show them that we can do it. We obviously have the talent. We have the people in Minnesota. We have the military group, Bullet Exchange. We have open air action design. We have great camera people, great directors, great production companies. All we have to do is come together and show that we can do exactly what they do out there. And to have all those pieces kind of come together for a local film and to work that great really surprised me and made me happy too, because that's obviously our ultimate goal.
It'd be fun to see the finished product.
Oh, it's going to be great. People are going to love it. They're going to get some funding, and then we're all going to get a job.
It's a professional, intelligent film. It's groundbreaking on what it's trying to do, from the visual aspect to the storytelling to the production.
I'd like the feature to be so good that people outside of Minneapolis are like, wow, again, because I don't think that anybody ever says wow when they think of Minneapolis.
Gray State is making waves. This is just within the regional aspect. This is before we start doing our national.
We have generated this concept that has resonated with people. With just the promise of a concept trailer, we're competing with other local feature films that have already got their budget, already shot, and they're on the downslope already. We're looking at the upslope.
I can't see Gray State not being a success. It's definitely gonna knock it out of the park.
It will get funded. It will be shot, and it will be made.
This is the rise. We're just starting out. That is my favorite part about Gray State, is that I hardly need to sell the concept.
Oh, working on Gray State was such a positive experience, and I was so glad to be a part of it. And I hope, sincerely, that we can move on to a feature film where I can work with these guys day in and day out and be a part of a really exciting process.